We ended up getting called in to be part of the invasion. We got the gas mask stuff ready. You can see the oil field burning early on. I remember when we first passed into Iraq, and one night I wake up to like tracers rounds just flying right overhead. Abram had rolled up almost right on top of us, and apparently they didn't even see us. All I see is the vapor trail. Like, it feels like just time just stopped in that moment. It literally just missed. Impact on the wall right next to Jonathan, and they're dragging him to safety. So my head slammed forward from the explosion and kind of come back up, and I just sent suppressive fire. It took us an hour and a half just to get him out of the combat.
All right, we are rolling. I'm very excited. Welcome back to the show. I am pumped to have our next guest on, Jared Anderson, Marine Corps infantry veteran, invasion veteran, and Ramadi veteran. That's how we kind of the last few guests that have come on, Josh and Gabe and Jared, are all your local boys here in the Midwest, Minnesota / Wisconsin. So, Jared, thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you. I feel honored to be your guest.
Absolutely. I'm excited. This is awesome. This is what I kind of initially started the show for, is getting more and more infantry guys on, tell their story, like in a unique perspective. And right before we started filming, I won't steal your thunder, but it's kind of that unique time in war when these opportunities come up that don't typically come up because of administration or whatever, like just basic paperwork, now, like you talk about getting called back in to be like, hey, you want to come back, here's you have the option to, you're not stop loss, but at that certain period of time, they're like, hey, would you like to come back? You can do it for this amount of time. That stuff, like myself as a combat advisor, like it's an aspect of the war that they needed it, they developed it, they did it, and then they disbanded it. Like it's like a flash in the pan. It's like lightning in a bottle. It's
Right.
You're there at the right time. Things are, even Josh with MARSOC, they're like, hey, you want to go to this new thing called MARSOC? He's like, okay, sounds cool, so it's awesome to have you on. And I definitely, you're pre 9/11 Marine as well. So I always love talking to the 90s boys and how the life was before that. So we'll just jump right into it. Where did you grow up, and then what motivated you to join the Marine Corps before 9/11 in the 90s?
So I grew up just south of Clear Lake, Wisconsin, out in the country. It was a pretty large farm at that time. And what kind of motivated me is when I was young, I had an uncle that was in the Army, and I had gotten a canteen and, an Army cover that for my birthday or whatever. And like, I remember wearing that everywhere and having the canteen bounce around and watching G.I. Joe. And that I felt like that was part of just my genetic makeup and who I was on kind of like the protector side, and what I believed, the military's purpose and what we were doing. And that kind of jumped me in. But I also had a few other things. I had both my grandpas that served in the military and were veterans as well. And then I'd had a band. It was band director, actually, that was very supportive of the military and everything else like that. And where a lot of the conversations really come into is like when we're playing the national anthem and how important that is and why. So at an early age, that was really integrated into my belief system and my pride, and really believing in the community. I mean, who are you protecting? Yeah. I had a really good community around me. Not everybody's perfect, everybody's got disagreements, but really solid community around me. Family, a lot of family that live close by that most people don't have support-wise. So being able to be a protector of that in that capacity was something that really kind of drove me, and I felt like it was just part of who I was.
That's cool. So, like you said, some of that inspiration coming from high school, and what years was that then? That they were like that you were going through high school, like that mid 90s.
Yeah, so I graduated in 99.
Okay.
So 96 through 99.
Yeah. Well, how'd the recruiter get you? Or I mean, like, how was it?
So the recruiter actually didn't get me. It was a direction I was already looking at wanting to go, and there was a movie that had come out with regarding the Navy SEALs, and so that was actually the direction and purpose I was going. So I talked to the Navy recruiter. I'd sought them out. I was a big wrestler. I was very physically fit. I grew up shooting a lot, just recreationally as a kid.
If you don't mind, what weight did you wrestle?
I wrestled 140 mostly.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I was 215, so I'm a bigger cat.
Slightly different, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, wrestling's wrestling when it comes down to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Midwest. That's why I like bringing it up because to me that's a big part of the reason I joined too. And wrestling was a big part of that. So
Right. Well, I think the discipline
yeah.
that you get from competitive sports like that, and particularly wrestling, and especially if you are competitive in it,
Yeah.
really helps mold a person. I mean, even my coach, he ended up becoming a Hall of Fame coach as well. So I had really good mentors and everything that really helped develop me and who I was and the capabilities I had that I was able to bring to the Marine Corps and my deployments and to other guys. So yeah, and that just really helped solidify, and what I was doing. But I had gone and talked to the recruiter. He showed me the whole Navy SEAL video, and it's kind of like the how to, whatever.
So what movie was it that got you into it?
So it was actually a marketing video.
Oh, marketing.
But
Okay.
what had me interested in it was the Navy SEAL movie that came out in the 90s. I forget exactly what it was, but I watched it over and over again back then. And so that was the direction I wanted to go. And I really didn't know anything about like recon or stay or anything like that on the Marine Corps side, really. And I think it was because I was hyper focused on going to Navy SEALs. Well, I was talking to the recruiter, and the recruiter had basically said, well, we can turn around and sign you up for this. And, after so much time in that type of unit, then you can try out for or submit for. And I'm like, I knew already he was just trying to fill kind of quota and whatever. And I felt like he was kind of giving me the go around and BS. And I'd had another really good mentor. So my uncle's brother was a combat controller in the Air Force, and then he'd gone to Delta and made Delta selection and was actually an instructor at Delta for a little while.
Really?
And
Well, that's pretty crazy to know that in the 90s. Like just knowing that, like knowing those people in that life.
Right.
Like in the 90s. Like now everybody knows. They just go on YouTube, Google Delta, and everyone's got connections. But back in the night, I mean, that's like, that's cool. That's pretty cool.
I think because of the direction I was going is half the reason why I even knew. Because so my uncle's brother that went that direction was my uncle that had served. That'd give me the wildcat in the canteen.
Yeah.
So when I was starting to look that direction, that's kind of when he connected to me as brother, and I found out more. And you know how a lot of people talk like, oh, I was in Delta or this, that. So I'd always kind of had this, I didn't really then, because I was naive and accepting, so I would have regardless. But I found out later some things come back around that it, verifying that he was in those type of units. But I had that as a mentor, and I really had him. It was nice on even the contract side, because a lot of people don't even know or realize like what you can get in your contract in an enlistment. And I'd had what was called at the time Uniform Zulu that I got on the Marine Corps, which basically guaranteed me I went to boot camp or basic, and I went to school of infantry, and then I went to BRC. Like that was in my contract for direction. That doesn't guarantee me recon because I could fail at something at any point, but it guaranteed that path, and that's what I wanted with the SEALs. I'm like I was almost certain that they could do it, and they're giving me this go around about a job that I didn't care or want or wasn't even necessarily similar enough, and I felt like I was going to be wasting the first year or year and a half or however long going that route, and then maybe I'll get stuck in whatever void of stuff. And so just having that mentor was huge, because I was standing outside, I was mad, and the Marine recruiter kind of come up and was like, hey, everything all right? I'm like, no, I'm pissed off. Like I was pissed. I was standing there so pissed off that somebody that I felt like I shouldn't entrust a little bit, that I was seeking leadership wise and going in this direction in the Navy, and then here I'm kind of getting this sideline of information, I believe. And so I was out there, I was so mad, and the Marine recruiter come up to me and was like, well, I'll tell you what, would you be willing to sit down with me, talk? If I don't have the answer for you, I'll tell you I don't have the answer for you, and I will go seek out where I can get the proper answer for it, and then come back to you on it. And I was like, sounds fair enough. And so we sat down, and I'd actually didn't really know anything about recon at that time, as much as kind of was in the history and war and stuff like that. I didn't really know much about recon. And that's where I was like, well, they are very similar to the SEALs, but I actually was more interested in them than the actual SEALs, because SEALs at that time was starting to transition a little bit more away from underwater demolitions and the water side and pre-amphibious landings and everything else like that, which depending on what recon battalion and or force recon or where you went, kind of determined some of those things. But recon spent a lot more time on the land.
Yeah.
The water was more so the avenue to get to land.
Yeah, opposed to just being on the water. Yeah,
whether it be sub or a Zodiac or however it is that you end up getting to land, essentially that's where the majority of operations were. And so I was actually I was excited. And so I went in that route, and that's what kind of got me in.
Yeah, that's cool. So when did you sign the papers and ship out?
So I actually signed up right when I turned 18, but I turned 18. I had the majority of my senior year left. I had opportunities. Coaches were kind of looking at me on the football side. I don't know whether they would have or not for wrestling, for colleges, because I'd already enlisted at that point. So it's kind of a waste of time for colleges to invest too much time on you at that point. But I knew where I was going the majority of my senior year. I just kind of focused on setting myself up for that. I just continued doing my thing. The nice thing with that amount of time too, and being in sports, is being physically fit, showing up at boot camp, getting a high PFT coming right out of the gates, growing up shooting and getting high shooting scores coming right out of the gates. Wasn't a ton that I learned other than more Marine Corps history. You get the book of knowledge and stuff like that. Like that side I learned more on. But otherwise, I felt like boot camp was kind of like a lot of going through the motions. I knew, it also helped I knew ahead of time they're going to yell at you. You're going to play games. You're going to go through this thing to try to get under your skin or whatever. And it's just going through for me, it was just going through the motions.
Do what you got to do.
Right. Yeah. So there was never this I'll get pissed off or I'm getting yelled at and screamed. I was like, it was just a process and I was just waiting for it to be over to get to the next point. And School of Infantry wasn't too much different. I like the fact that we did a little bit more shooting and started getting on the infantry side, so started learning.
Into the Breach is excited to be teamed up with 9 Line Apparel. They are the best. They are a veteran-owned apparel company that embodies the American spirit. Go check out 9lineapparel.com for freedom-loving, patriotic gear perfect for your family members, first responders, veterans, and active duty service members. When you're done selecting the amazing merchandise and apparel 9 Line has to offer, punch in the code ITB20, that's India Tango Bravo 20, for a 20% discount off your next purchase at 9lineapparel.com. Vet TV is a streaming service created by veterans for veterans, with over 30 different series to choose from, including our new series Battle Lab that features special operations soldiers going head-to-head with the newest tactics and threats on the modern battlefield. Into the Breach listeners have an exclusive discount of paying $1 a month for the first 2 months of subscription with the code BREACH. So head on over to Vet TV, type in BREACH at checkout to receive this incredible offer for your Vet TV subscription. Thank you for listening, and now back to the show. What was that like in the 90s and like in 99, before, because funding's a lot lower. It's a different, this is pre 9/11. So what was that atmosphere like? What were you guys talking about? What were you guys thinking? Or is it just, it's just, a lot of us that, eventually went into combat, the invasion, we'll get to that. But like for guys like me that joined, we're like, we're going to war. Like we're doing, what was it like for guys like you, just emotionally or just in general? Like, all right, well, I'm joining to do this. Something might what were you guys thinking when you're going through either boot or infantry school? What were they kind of training you guys on?
I think they're kind of pushing that, because that's what we're trained for, is to be able to go to combat, and that's their responsibility is to have us prepared to do such if it happened. So I really felt like that was still there. It just might not have felt the same or hit the same to everybody. For me, that's part of why I wanted to go recon, because my understanding they deployed more. Like that was my purpose. Like I wanted to go, I wanted to be in the action where the action was. I preferred to do the higher intensity stuff. So that was part of like why I specifically joined. And so I was looking for that. I was kind of hungry for that, but I knew when I went there, I wanted to be good at what I did. So it was pick up as much as I can, learn as much as I can, PT as much as I can, get on the mats and, you know, the hand-to-hand as much as I can, the range time, whether it be official or whether it be in my off time, you know. So there's a lot of just developing that was the biggest thing. And then going to Recon, we didn't really get too deep in stuff. It was kind of, I believe it was actually before the school itself had actually officially picked up, is when I'd gotten hypothermia really bad when we're out in the ocean doing some
doing
training
like
and stuff
RIP or
like
whatever
that.
they call it, or
Yeah,
like
I believe-
pre-recon or whatever they call it. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe what it was. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of confusing looking at my orders at, like, what stage it officially was in or not, you know, type deal and memory-wise. But I feel like it was right before the actual official class, like, picked up. Which was, I was really upset. That, I mean, that's what I joined for. Like, that was everything. And I felt like, okay, maybe an injury or something might get me because I was a high PFT. You know, I felt like I was in probably, personally, and it might be a little bit of arrogance or cockiness, like at that time or my memory, but I felt like I was in the top, like, 10%. And then something I had no control over. It didn't help. I was a wrestler.
Yeah.
So I was literally sitting under 4% body fat-ish, which probably doesn't help.
No.
Keep yourself warm. And it was like
Yeah.
32 degrees outside and 34-degree water, or the opposite. I don't necessarily remember.
It's pretty cold. Yeah,
it was
because
cold.
California gets cold. People don't realize, like, especially if you're training in the ocean. Were you in the ocean, I imagine?
Yeah.
So, like, and was it around wintertime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was off Coronado. I believe it was like February. I feel like it was towards the middle to end of February. And so the currents on that coast all come from the north, you know, versus the other coast, they come kind of from the south, which affect the water temperatures and stuff like that to some degree. And so a lot of my faith was in the instructors, and thank goodness between the instructor and the guy bringing me in, I'd gotten mild hypothermia. What was interesting about it is earlier that week, like, I'd gotten mild hypothermia. I just couldn't stop shaking, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I was kind of like, oh, whatever, hypothermia,
Yeah.
you know, just kind of like whatever. It's like kind of a joke, right? Because I just couldn't stop shaking. It wasn't like super painful. It wasn't, you know, dramatic or anything like that to me. And so I was kind of like laughing at it, you know, kind of in the face of like hypothermia, right? Type deal. And then here I got it bad when I was out there.
What did it feel like, or what is that like?
So it started going into the water, and I won't say the hypothermia started. It was so cold out and in there. It was the first time, and I used to jump in the river just in and out to say, hey, the first one of the year, you know, in January, you know, because I grew up on a river. And it felt like ice just shooting through your body, like pain, needles. And it's one of those things, like, when you're in units like that, stuff's painful all the time.
Yeah.
You know, you just put it in a compartment and you just do, you know, you just keep throwing your feet forward on the ruck run or whatever it is that you're doing. You just ignore it, basically. You know, you got that weird compartment in your head that you can put, like, pain here, you know, and you just keep going. And so I'm like, everybody else is doing this. I'm going to be all right. You know, there's instructors, they're there to make sure I don't die. You know, so it's just going through it, and I end up actually being a mock victim too. So now I'm supposed to be like dead weight out there, and another guy's supposed to be bringing me in. He lost one of his fins, so he's going even slower. And I was just trying to boost his confidence too, because he was apologizing. He was like, "Sorry it takes so long," and everything else like that. I'm like, you know, just giving him encouragement. You got this, man. You're doing fine. You know, type deal. And an instructor had come over to check on me. And he was like, "Hey, you doing all right?" And, you know, I kind of gave him my thumbs up because, like, I ain't quitting. You know, I mean, it sucked. I was shaking like crazy. It was kind of painful still, but, like, I just wasn't really thinking about it. All I was thinking about is getting back and then what's next on our list that we're going to have to do, you know, knocking that out. And just kind of putting my trust, like I said, in the instructors. They're not going to let me die, you know, type deal. And apparently the guy bringing me in had looked at me, and I guess I was just blue.
Oh, yeah.
And he had just turned and said to the instructor, he's like, I think you need to turn around and come and look at him because he's, like, blue. So the instructor swam up closer on because he was out on a board, right? And he was like, "We need to get him in now." And I'm like, like kind of cussing under my breath, and I was just because like when it comes to health things, you only got so many of them, or so much training you can miss, or whatever for health aspects, and you end up being a drop, and you can't help it. And I still didn't realize how bad it was yet, but we're way out beyond the surf. So I'm sitting on the board, I'm like gripping on, I'm like shaking, the instructor's like swimming behind, and you got the wave crashing down on you, so then you got that, and then you come up on top of the wave, and then you got the cold breeze blowing over you, just sending chills down your spine. So finally got on shore. I couldn't even stand up anymore, and they're kind of holding me up, ripping off. We had a cheetah vest at that time, which is just, you got the hood and it comes down, covers your chest. And so they're cutting that off me, got me in the hospital. They're wrapping blankets around me as they're getting me to the vehicle. They're trying to do the sensory test with the eyes, and they're like my whole body was starting to cramp at that point, where it's like you're just so tight from shaking, like where you got a cramp in one area only. It started being like the whole body was that way, and your eyes are just like shut. And I remember how good those blankets felt. And then getting there, and their nurses and everybody like rubbing on the muscles and everything else like that. And so I was at a transition between the mercury thermometers and the digital thermometers, and they had the early release of the digital thermometers there, and my temperature didn't even show up. And they're like trying to find mercury thermometers there. I remember this because normally with hypothermia, one of the things you can go through, especially for how bad I got, is shock, which is actually meant to protect your body and your vital organs, and the rest of your body shuts down, and it keeps the blood flow in the main organ area. Well, that actually wasn't happening. So I remember, and I'm very aware of like everything that's kind of going on, and they were looking for mercury thermometers and they couldn't find one. Well, finally my temperature ended up showing back up on the digital thermometers. I'm like, well, it's kind of like, if this happened to me, I guess that's kind of cool that it was that bad, or at least that, but
got a good story out of it.
Right, exactly. It's kind of a good story, but man, that was a horrible day. I remember laying there, and for knowing how bad it was, that it was an automatically, doctors were saying a week missing a training, and I knew hypothermia is something, once you get it, it's easier to get it again.
It's kind of like HECAT goes on your record. It's like if you get it, it's easier to get it again.
But whether it went on my record or not, I care about all my guys that are around me, right? Like I feel like I'm responsible for their lives, whether I'm a private, a sergeant, or more than that. And my concern was, I could go back, and if I did make it through BRC, I got cold so easily. Like I'm wearing a fleece out in Southern California and not sweating, or when I went to North Carolina, it'd be like 90-some degrees out, and I'd have a fleece on and not even sweating. So like it took a while to kind of recover kind of from that down the line.
Let's have your hat back, just a little skosh. There you go.
And so it takes time to recover from that. My concern was, even if I made it, because that's where I want to be, even if I made it, and if I'm out on an operation somewhere and I go down, like I understand when somebody goes down, it affects 1 to 2 other people just to make sure you make it back, right? And I was so concerned about that. I'm like, even if I made it, was one of the better shooters and everything else like that, to end up being out on an operation and knowing that was a strong probable position to be in, and then saying, my ego having the better of me, I'm doing it anyway, and then it affecting lives. It was hard to swallow, but I felt like that's the decision I need to make. And so I didn't really pursue Recon again. I ended up later on stay, because I'm like, well, they're not in the water quite so much. So the hypothermia aspect was less of a concern. So I felt like, after my time with the Hilo assault platoon with 2-2, then I turned around and took the sniper in dock. But I was devastated.
Yeah. So what do you go from Recon then, or go from BRC, go to 2-2, or so what's your path then?
So I end up waiting for orders. You're kind of in a, where do I go next, type deal. And so I end up getting orders to 2-2, and I end up having, I think, I feel like I had just a little bit of time back home before then. I don't necessarily remember, but I remember getting there, And the one thing I'm thankful for of the hypothermia aspect on my record is normally recon guys, because they're decent swimmers and everything else like that, then go to a boat company. But my hypothermia thing and just my time and getting there, for whatever reason, Gulf Company Command wasn't there, and so there was this kind of conversation about, well, I'll get placed with Fox Company, and Fox Company was a Hilo cell platoon, and so I got put with them, and I'm definitely thankful because I was good at swimming. I ended up becoming McQuist certified and running some classes myself, but again, I didn't want to be that dead weight. I didn't want to end up being out doing boat work or something like that in a real mission and cause problems with my guys. So I kind of took that away, and it also made it more enjoyable, because having the hypothermia and probably putting myself in that position a lot closer, I didn't necessarily really want to go through that experience or make the hypothermia a bigger issue for the lifetime or something. I wanted to hopefully get away from that. So,
well, Hilo assault sounds awesome. I never did it, so
no, I loved it.
Yeah. What'd you guys do? Or like, walk me through. What you guys, what was the unit? What'd you guys do?
So the Hilo Cell Platoon was kind of the next closest thing to that. We ended up going through the special operation cable deal. So like embassy extraction, embassy reinforcement, down pilot missions. We had hard hit and soft hit raids. Hard hit, you actually land on the objective. Soft hit, you land several thousand meters or miles away and then work your way to the objective. And the objective could be a lot of things: hostage rescue, taking out particular anti-air weaponry or something like that. Not necessarily usually that, because if it was anti-air, that's usually when it would be a soft hit, because we're not going to land right on an anti-air objective usually. It was just a wide assortment of missions that could play out. But embassy extraction, embassy reinforcement, down pilot, and hostage rescue type missions were kind of our more focus on the special operations side or assistant special operations side. Otherwise, I don't know, I just felt like that's kind of what we were trained around, because our whole purpose was to be on a MEU. So we're sitting there I was on the LHD the first time, the USS Saipan, and then the second time, the USS Nassau. But with that, you're sitting there floating around waiting for something to happen. You're like the emergency reactionary force in that portion of the world. So for my first deployment, it was the majority of the Mediterranean.
How was that?
So that was pretty, like you said, it was kind of like the pre-9/11 deal. It was USS Cole took place while we're on that. So
oh shit, yeah,
we elevated our security some. Otherwise it was what we referred to as a booze cruise. We're sitting there waiting for something to happen, waiting to be called somewhere, and we went from port to port and restocked and did our kind of training. We basically, I felt from my perspective, like existed. We're there for the what ifs, and we actually did a real world operation. We'd gone on what was called Modlock for about a month, which is like no communications and everything else like that. And
what was it? Sorry, what was it called?
Modlock.
Modlock, is that what they call? Oh, okay, I was never on ship, so
yeah. I don't know if that was just a term that somebody coined it and was just a thing on that deployment or a regular thing, but we called it Modlock, where everything was locked down. We couldn't get on and call home or anything else like that. We'd actually had Delta Force had come on, and we were a supporting element to that. And so being on an LHD, they got a big ramp that goes up to the flight deck, and we're staged across from them. And this is where it kind of comes full circle on confirming that my mentor, had actually made it through Delta Force. And we're told they're Navy SEALs. These Delta Force didn't exist, and they're way better at OPSEC than what than what it seems. And I think it's higher up people that have less OPSEC than some of us, but OPSEC was to the point where even us being a supporting element, we're told these guys were SEALs. Certain things, just because of conversations and stuff with my uncle's brother, that and reading historically and Black Hawk Down and all those things, like I was almost certain that it was Delta. And I could also pick out different designation that I felt that existed on them that kind of had their background. And since my uncle was a combat controller that ended up making Delta selection, there was somebody that had particular designation that I felt on their uniform that was combat controller. I was like, well, if I'm gonna ever throw out his name, it's the only time I ever throw out his name. If I'm gonna throw out his name, the odds of somebody knowing him would be this person. And so we weren't supposed to talk to him at all, but I was working. We just rotate out shifts on guard duty, all the packs and everything else like that. I happened to be rotated on that shift, and I was like, they happened to be up there. He happened to be, whether he was security on their gear at that time or if he was just going through his gear and just making sure it's ready, I don't really know. But I went over there and I was like, hey, do you know? I threw out my uncle's brother's name, and he like stopped what he was doing because he was kind of busy doing something. And he looked at me and he was like, how do you know him? And so I kind of got in the story, it was my uncle's brother, and he was kind of my mentor and stuff. And then we kind of shared some stories, and he was like, so he was actually a student when my uncle was an instructor, allegedly. Again, I don't know no, that's for sure. But that's, the response I got. And then we sat there, and I felt it was kind of nice because when you're in two different elements of OPSEC security and like, I don't know what you would call it, like we don't talk to, or whatever type of environment, to actually just sit down and have a conversation with one of these guys, and actually gave me some good motivation for myself that played out, when in going into stay and things like that after I got back. But it was just cool to kind of verify that it wasn't just somebody that was in that wanted to add to their story, just to get an extra pat on the back or whoa, that was cool, it was awesome.
That's
to
really
really
cool.
have that.
It's funny. I kind of get that every once in a while, and you just run into guys in the same circles, like, oh, you were there. Oh, you know this guy.
It's so hard. I can see it for you being an actual Marine Scout sniper and having that full designation. Like, it's iffy whether I even want to throw out. Like, I was in the platoon and passed the indoc because everybody's like, you go on the boards and everybody Marine they run into, they claim was, a Marine Scout sniper in that platoon or Recon. And I'm like, well, I was never that, but I did go to some of the schools. I didn't totally make it through or whatever. But it's like, you almost hate saying it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I could even imagine more so being, actual Marine Scout sniper designation at like, man, like, do I really tell them? Because they're going to be like, oh yeah, another one of those.
No. Well, the thing is, I know guys' stories, like guys that don't make it, the guys in the platoon. Like, guys that I served I was telling you before this, I served alongside, like, some of the best snipers that we had, or even other units I've even heard of, they never made it. They were pigs, or they never made it through school, and they got kills and stuff like that, So the designation's great by all means. That's awesome. But sometimes in those operational environments, it's kind of like Rangers, Rangers, some of the best Rangers out there, they didn't even go to Ranger school, guys that end up being team leaders, stuff like that. Like, it just didn't work out, or most of them do, but they're like, oh yeah, I just never made it to Ranger school, but they were Ranger regiment, or stuff like that. Or even guys that were in sniper platoon, they got their kills,
I think there's a lot different
in platoon, it's just different. It's just things different, but but I like hearing, because you guys you did it, you're at, in stay. It's part of your history, like that's what it is.
I think it's different in different respect from those that were in the platoon, and spent time and understand the different elements of, those that, made it all the way through and got the designation and the actual MOS, and those that took indocs and didn't make it, or made it through the indoc and was with a platoon, or those that ended up failing through school or whatever it is. I feel like there's a different level of respect. Like, I know I got a much different level of respect because I know what you guys did, and I know what you had to do, to get that extra designation and stuff like that. I mean, you kind of coined some of it as luck, but I know there's a lot of mental stamina and capability that comes with it, as well as, physical fitness preparation. You have to do stuff on your own. Like, I don't feel anybody just walks in there with the genetics and hit a lucky time and makes it through school. Like,
there's a lot of prep that goes into it. Yeah. So the one, that's an awesome story with your brother's uncle, or sorry, your uncle's. Jeez. your uncle's brother
Right.
with Delta. I'll say it, Delta. You know, and whatnot. So when you made that connection, what were you guys? How was the rest of that trip? And do you have any like fond memories or anything that like sticks out to you from being on the Mediterranean
So like
on
I
the
said,
booze cruise?
yeah. So that was like a booze cruise. I didn't really get off ship as much because I was so focused entering on the aspect of being a good Marine in combat and combat prep. Like I literally was like, nobody's in the gym.
Yeah.
And I was in the gym working out on ship usually, and everybody else was running around on port. Croatia, Dubrovnik, Croatia, is probably one of my most favorite ports.
Yeah.
That if there's on that deployment, we hit from Portugal to Turkey and some countries in Africa, and yeah, I would have never guessed beforehand that out of all those countries that I kind of been to, the one I'd really want to go back, and specifically that city would have been Croatia.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, Dubrovnik is a really cool city, has a lot of history to it. The people were very welcoming. I hope we're one of the first elements for the U.S. Navy to actually like kind of Navy and Marine Corps to actually port there and go in. So we didn't really have, you know, a negative reputation from those that, you know, made a bad name, drinking too much or causing issues, you know, type deal. Everybody wanted our business, very welcoming. Being able to connect with the people and learn about them and their culture and everything was like really cool. And there is a few other countries that I would have expected a little bit different that were very standoffish. I don't really want to like name names on countries, but there's some countries where I expected them to be a lot more friendly, and they weren't. And they big focus, I felt like a lot of it was how they could turn around and work whatever money off of you, or you know, and pickpocketers were big. In all of Europe, pickpocketing I think was a lot more big of a deal. But yeah, there's Dubrovnik and Croatia would probably be my biggest thing.
I've heard Croatia's amazing. I mean, I've seen videos on my wife and I heard there's like amazing. We scuba dive, so I've heard there's amazing scuba diving.
Oh, the water is like
it's like a hidden
beautiful.
Gem. Yeah.
We went cliff jumping there, so there's Dubrovnik has these massive walls around what was the old city, and that actually protected the city during the Serb and Croat War. Apparently, the Serbs could not really ever actually take that city, and they just set off in the distance and hit them with artillery and indirect fire and everything else like that. But the walls were one of the aspects that really protected them, and they actually grew food, you know, right out their windows in the like Potter things. On the rooftops, wherever they could grow food, you know, so they end up being fairly self-sufficient and having access to water. So even being under siege, they had all the necessities to help survive, and they just managed to survive that war.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, that's especially cool. I mean, like I said here, I was bringing up, you're in the 90s, but it's pretty big experience. Like, you just don't have like YouTube now, or you can look it up, like, let's go to Croatia, you know, or someone like backpacking and showing you around it. I mean, it's like, I don't say it's a culture shock, but it's definitely something that you wouldn't experience unless you'd like join the military. You know, very few people made their way to Croatia in 1999 or 2000. You know?
or was even on their list of places to go.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like no one even thought about going there. Yeah. Right. Now it's like, you know, people's, you know, their awareness of a lot of places to go are like, oh yeah, let's give that a shot, you know. So.
Yeah. Well, it also didn't help, like, before that time, you know, 10, 20, even longer, years before that, the fighting between the Serb and the Croats and everything like that in the area, it leading over to other areas in the Balkans, like Kosovo and stuff like that, kind of, it wasn't the hot spot necessarily to go. It was more of a kind of contention hot area. Like, if they're taking indirect fire, you know, in Dubrovnik in the city, are you going to want to, like, hell yeah, let's go visit there? So, I mean, we're just timing, you know, that you kind of mentioned before. Timing can be a big thing, being right spot at the right time, you know, in different locations and areas on whether they're friendly or whether they're not to Americans on the geopolitical side, you know, on standing on support for wars or not support for wars can make a big difference on just how they welcome Americans or are more standoffish, and some of it can be the geopolitical side on where we're at, you know, war stance wise. Like, even right now with what's going on with, Israel and the Middle East. It's how other countries look at that. I am curious, like how do the actual people in the different communities and countries really feel about Americas? Are they different? Are they kind of the same? Have they changed?
Yeah. I was a backpack after I got out of the Marine Corps, and I was a contractor. I was backpacking a lot, mostly through Central America. So it's always fun to hear people's opinions. I mean, this was back in 2012 or 11 or 2012, 13 time frame. Just kind of seeing what other people thought, or running into because they didn't run into Americans a lot. So you're like, oh, Americans down here, right? Going through hostels. But yeah, I mean that was back then, and it was everybody had a pretty general positive feeling, with the U.S., but they were just shocked that there was any, because everyone thought we were Canadians, because Canadians do that. They're very backpacking culture within their community, or within the culture. Canadian culture, they take a year off and then they go to college, whereas like U.S., they go to Cancun, in college and call it, that's their
more the spring breakers.
Spring breakers, going off to explore the world is Cancun. But so I mean, Croatia was an awesome stop. And was there anything else that stuck out to that deployment in the Mediterranean that you guys did, or any type of training that was like really stuck out to you?
Malta. That was another beautiful island, and I believe it was Malta. I ended up having a fireman's carry my guy all the way back. So when you're on a booze cruise and or you're hitting ports, you have a battle buddy, which basically says you're responsible for the other person. Regardless of the decision the other person makes, you're 100% just as responsible for. And we're out, and I actually think somebody might have put something in his drink, or he could have ended up drinking too much. I'm not necessarily really sure, because we'd hit a point where we had not drank for quite a while, and I believe this was after we'd come off the mod lock. So you're basically mission ready status. There's no pours, no drinking, none of that type of stuff. And so when it's out of your system for that long, and you're maybe used to drinking more, and then suddenly you're like hit a port and then drink, you get drunk a lot quicker. And I kind of believe that existed them, and we're pushing the time that we need to be back to the boat. And he would just, we're kind of right at that time, kind of started passing out. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And so we turned around, had to make the bus stop, and I turned around and literally picked him up, fireman's carry, and I'm doing like a pack run, only I got him on my back. And we got back, we were probably the last 10 people on. And you have to do a whole request permission to board type deal and salute process. And I helped him out on that, and they kind of waived his ability, because you're supposed to be capable of 100% on your own, otherwise they don't let you. And so it was kind of a happy medium. He got sent to medical, and then okay, now I'm stuck watching him all night, type deal. So that was my punishment. I'm sitting here watching somebody sleep. After being out.
I think he was drugged. then I'll
yeah. So that was kind of an experience. I'd always been one that was usually the sober person. I like being in control of what I do and how I'm able to respond. But I think the bigger thing is mental awareness. Especially in foreign countries and everything else like that. The mental awareness of what might be a threat. And it might be something simple as a pickpocketer, and what they could turn around and do if they got your ID and cards or anything else like that.
Well, it sucks. It's also I hate bringing it up, but it's the 90s, man. You just can't like hop on a phone or like, oh, hey, I lost my shit. Let me go, get something renewed, or log into my email and get something. I mean, like, so your wallet goes. Right. That's it, man. There ain't no getting it back, or trying to figure all that shit out. So yeah, I mean that's a pretty big deal, especially back in those days. Yeah,
well, I mean even in your wallet, type deal. What we do is we carry particular numbers, emergency numbers, in multiple places on our body. So like if our wallet got pickpocketed, if you got the number to call back to ship, or who you're supposed to call if suddenly you're stuck somewhere or lost, or let them know this is where I'm at, this is what's going on, and I'm stuck. Like, if you have that in your wallet and that's the only place you have it, and your wallet gets pickpocketed from you, then you're figuring out, how do I navigate where I am, get back to the ship, which a lot of times you can talk to different people, but again, you're entrusting in that they're giving you the right direction, or the cab's taking you the right place, you know, and or that they're not trying to work you over as well. And it's even harder if your wallet's gone. Like, okay, how is a cab guy gonna bring you back to ship? You know, so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of early navigating, being out in the world, in uncharted territory for you know, somebody fresh, you know, that grew up, you know, you've been around the United States and stuff like that, but on the world level, you know, it's kind of a new experiences. The language barriers can be one thing as well, where you're just trying to find somebody that you can have a conversation with if all you know is English. You know, some people had Spanish as a background. I didn't actually take that in high school, so I was literally stuck with English, and I would study some of the words. You know, you're kind of given a book or a sheet that you could turn around, kind of go over, and there'd be a handful of different words that you could practice or learn, you know, in a particular language to use, you know, when you're out on town. So we'd kind of study those a little bit, but yeah, it's a different experience being in where you're one of the few. Once you're separated from the rest of your guys and in your own kind of area, some people stuck together as a pack a lot more, you know, with their unit or with more guys, but there's a lot of guys that spread it out, and a lot of times, you know, I'd be with just the guy I was with, or, you know, you'd run into people at different points, but yeah, you're kind of out there on your own.
Yeah. So, so like I said, it's, you know, I guess, like I said, a bit exciting for a kid from Wisconsin, you know, running around the world on a mule or whatnot. So when you guys are, I mean, was anything else happening on that deployment before you guys came back, or what was that rotation like and how long have you guys gone for?
We're on I believe it was 6.5 months, and that was pretty standard kind of at that time. It didn't get held over. There's no combat really going on, and the purpose was to get back. People getting out that finish their 4 years, get out, and you get your new guys, and you work on training up to be able to go back over on another deployment. So it's just kind of the cycle between training, picking up new guys, going over there, picking up the experience. We'd gone into like Tunisia was my first, or my African country that really kind of stands out. Seeing starvation and people with minimum resources kind of for the first time on that level, you know, was kind of a first. And we were kind of in an area that was kind of secluded, where we kind of set up because we're there for training. So you're not going to necessarily do that in the middle of one of their cities. So we didn't really have too much interaction with the actual populace. You just kind of see the goat herders, or, you know, the kind of random people kind of passing through, or someone would be curious and they'd kind of come up to, we'd had concertina wire and barriers kind of set up around our perimeters and watches and stuff like that. But they'd come up and kind of talk to us or ask for food and things like that. But yeah, that was kind of different, you know, and that was kind of a desertish type of environment for the most part, kind of like Southern California. So I kind of had the exposure with School of Infantry and stuff like that, being at Pendleton. But yeah, that was just a unique experience on the level that, you know, when you're used to growing up, where I don't want to say food is plentiful for everybody, but we got our programs, and I didn't really feel it's different.
Yeah.
People that look at starvation in the United States and what it is around the other parts of the world, it's completely different. I don't know how else to really explain it.
Well, it's like famine, actually. You know, like it's like what we say, like our poor people are fat. You know, like and it's like you have real, you know, starvation or real. I mean, there's no food. There's nothing at all. You know, like there's no one's getting anything from anywhere.
Where they spend a good part of their day just finding enough resources to make it through the next week. You know, whether it be collecting water or hunting, you know, or grazing their goats, you know, for the time, either whether it be for the milk or the meat or whatever it is, you know. So it's like, yeah, or some of it's the ports, you know, when the ships come in with food and they have whatever it is that they trade. out to be able to bring in some of the resources. So yeah, it was a different experience, you know, and awareness of actually how well off we are, and it kind of very humbling. On that, yeah, definitely a different perspective of.
I'd imagine, yeah, starvation in Tunisia. That's gonna really make you appreciate U.S.
Right.
you know, logistics and supply chains. Yeah, I mean, like in generalities, just what you can get instantly, you know, or going around the block. And
Well,
I mean,
how much we throw away.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I mean, everything sticks with you, you know. Even, you know, I've been to Afghanistan, Iraq, and all this stuff. Now they were, you know, city centers, and there's plenty, you know, say plenty of food, but there was, you know, they weren't starving or anything like that. You know, especially in Afghanistan when I was going, you know, there's plenty of stuff going on, but you do see that aspect of like, wow, how much we do throw away, you know, how much, you know, we waste, you know,
Yeah.
and how easy it, especially nowadays. I mean, I'm sure everybody's guilty of it, but you know, we DoorDash a lot, you know, so you're just the ease of getting food is it's pretty wild. And then going on to the rest of the world, you actually go to places that are, you know, either short on food or just they logistically don't have that. Like you really have to think out the next week. Like, you know, obviously makes it appreciate what you got back here, you know. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. So after Tunisia, where'd you guys hit after that?
I don't know. I don't necessarily recall the exact order and all those. Those are just things that kind of stood out on that deployment. And the coal thing really changed things. When the USS Cole was attacked, our security levels drastically went up, which just sucked. Because on our standpoint, well, the Marines don't really have nothing to do. It's the Navy that does all the work while we're at sea, you know, type deal. And we do our work, you know, when we're called upon or we're offloading for a mission or training, you know. So largely we're just kind of on standby, cleaning our weapons and hitting the gym and doing what we can be to be combat ready. But largely it's the Navy doing their thing at that point. So here you're just kind of on standby, and it kind of drags out a bit. But even worse was when the security elements elevated. All right, what are the Marines doing? We're not really doing anything. All right, so every so many feet around the whole perimeter, we had watch set up, and we'd be standing watch as pairs, you know, and you spend hours just watching water. You know, there'd be times that it'd be raining, it'd be storming, the winds would be blowing.
Yeah.
You know, you're out there in your ponchos, and you got everything all up trying to stay dry. And the unique part about the Marine Corps side of stand-in duty like that, though, is the level you get to know each other on is something I don't think you ever compare to.
Yeah.
I can't compare to anything else in life at how closely connected you become. And not just standing and watch on duty there. I mean, it could be back in the rear, just standing pack duty for like 4 to 6 hours, or, you know, whatever type of guard duty you're put on, where you're literally just sitting there watching nothing go on for hours and hours. Well, you start to talk, you know, and you find out all sorts of different cultural backgrounds from different people that grew up in, you know, different family environments and different family situations that end up joining the Marine Corps. You find out about, you know, their stupidest, funniest, craziest situations that they got themselves into or they did. I feel like people end up opening up to a real level that they wouldn't otherwise. You know, I feel like everybody has parts of them that they don't just like open up to everybody. You know, even some of your closer friends, like there's parts of you that you might open up more with one friend and more with a different friend just because of how you relate on different things. But you're sitting there for hours. Like eventually you talk through your whole life. You know, especially when it's repetitive, you know, with somebody. And so how well you know somebody, I think it also vastly benefits to being able to be in tune, even more so with your guys. You know, if they end up being under you, being able to pick up and realize something's going on. You know, whether it be if they're married in a marriage situation, dating situation, kids, parents, whatever it is that's going on. You end up being emotionally in tune a lot more. Like you can just pick up that something's going on or something's not right with somebody, and open up the question. Well, I just found out, my dad's in the hospital with cancer and whatever, and you're stuck on this deployment.
Yeah.
And their dad might have been the closest person in the world to them. Somebody else, they might not have ever known their dad. But knowing him and what his dad was to him, and now finding out that his dad's got cancer, so everybody needs to be 100% when it comes to actually going into combat. So being able to know people and being that and tuned to people's lives and what's going on, just it really helps you become a more effective leader or even just fellow teammate in a lot of ways.
No, I agree, 100%. And like I say, you do get close with a lot of guys. I mean, I spent a lot of time on post in the wild, just over comms, and then it's just like, you're with somebody or you're with people just sitting there for hours and hours. It's like, all right, well, I guess I know what, everyone's life to the, you know what's going on, or, what, some scheme they're cooking up or some, plan that they have or whatever,
Right.
So it's always fun. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you got to know what your guys are going through so that you guys are ready to rock and roll when the time comes. So you do that deployment. What happens when you come back? Are you, because you say you went into Kosovo or you went to stay and whatnot. So like, what was the evolution from that first deployment into taking your next steps?
So we come back, I feel like we weren't back that long because even stay, they have a bunch of guys getting out and, are dealing with that replenishing resources on the personnel side, so I feel like it happened shortly after getting back. When everybody first gets back, everybody's taking leave, you processing out, and then you're getting your new guys. And I feel like it was not too long after getting the new guys, because I remember getting new guys and kind of starting to, develop relationships or getting to know some of them for a little bit. And then I found out that they're going to be running an in-dog first day. I think I actually went over and talked to them and kind of started, I'm interested in coming over there.
Bring this a little closer to you. Oh, you just bring it to you too. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that I'm interested in coming over there.
Yeah.
And I'd already kind of felt that on the deployment that I was going to look at moving that next step. It was just, things falling into place. And I'd also already started kind of training. Like I knew you do a lot more weighted and pack stuff. And I know that I knew stuff about the in-dog, like the 12.5-mile pack run at that time may have changed later. But, so I started preparing myself because I want to do well when that time did come. And I remember going over and talking to them. And there's an in-dog coming up. So I tried getting locked in on that, but for whatever reason, I don't know why, and maybe it was just a game that they played with me a little bit, but my current command didn't want to release me over to be able to take the in-dog.
Very common. That's not just your experience.
Common?
That's a very common. Oh yeah. That's. I mean, it's scout sniper platoons are notorious, or the battalions are notorious for. I don't know if it's just a Marine culture thing, but it was. I mean, I knew guys from other units that happened to. They're like, "Oh, we want to try out." No, you're not. Or, "Oh, okay. I got selected to go to the SIP, and they just told us no." And so the company commander's like, "You're not going." Or something happened where first sergeant, somebody was like, "No, you're not going." And we're like, "Yeah, but we made it." So then we came back to we didn't show up to the first formation of scout sniper of like the SIP.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Where are you?" They're like, "We were told we're not allowed to go." So it literally went from like, I don't know if it was lieutenant or staff sergeant from scout, the chief scout or whatever, platoon sergeant, went over to Lima company and they're like, "You need to let them go." And then it did. They came down from battalion command like, "These kids," it was just like this whole
game between
game to play. Like, why are we you let us try out? We made it. why would you say no? You know, like,
Right.
anyways, that's very, like, so your experience, you know, would they let us go eventually, but like, or trying out 100%. That is very standard. Ironically, sadly, standard.
Yeah, because
Or
your
was, yeah.
unit has stuff that is scheduled to do.
Exactly,
You know, so
yeah.
even taking an in-doc, like you need to be able to get permission from somebody to be able to go over there. And my unit didn't want to let us go, and so I went over to stay and told them what my unit was saying. Like, well, they don't have a choice in it. We're gonna turn around. It's gonna come down that you will be here. I'm like, okay, yeah. So my unit then come back to me like, yeah, you know what? You better pass that in-doc then.
Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna stand out against us, you know, and it might have been one of those things. So they wanted to say they wanted to just really make sure that we legitimately wanted to go, you know, type deal, and. So it didn't deter us. We did what we did. I turned around and took the in-doc. Now, my first in-doc, it actually ended up being what was called a Black Flag Day. And I don't know if you guys had those and familiar with that in your era when you served, but Black Flag was when the temperatures and humidity was over a certain level, like certain physical training,
Okay.
is not supposed to happen.
Is this Pendleton or is this
This is the June.
Lejeune? Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. So it was a Black Flag Day, and we weren't even supposed to be like doing the in-doc. And I believe, I don't know when it became Black Flag, if it was after we'd already started it or if it was before and we just started with it anyway. And it was a 2-day in-doc, basically, when I went through it. And a good chunk had already dropped out, and we're on the 12.5-mile pack run. And that's kind of like the back end of the in-doc. That after that, you pretty much have the obstacle course for us, where you run through the obstacle course twice, timed, and you gotta beat a certain time. And then what we call PT for points, where you do a whole bunch of different exercises, as many you can in a certain amount of time, or as many pull-ups and things like that. And they called it bonus points, but I think it was just to see a mental thing, you know, more so than an actual whether you're gonna get accepted or not, and then the interview. So that is literally the last portion of it. And 12.5-mile pack run is fierce, especially after going through all the rest of the in-doc that already took place. And I'd made it over halfway, and I think, if I recall right, there's like 4 of us left at this point. And I don't remember how many. I feel like 20 some plus had initially taken the in-doc, and we're down to like 4 people. And I was to the point where I knew I wasn't even like running straight completely anymore, but I was not quitting. Like, I don't care, I'm not quitting. Like, that was it. That was my mindset. I will end up just passing. Something will happen to my body. I'll shut down, I'll pass out, whatever it is, but I'm not going to quit until then, you know. And finally an instructor made a call, like, to get in the vehicle, and I was like, I'm not quit. I think it might have been a gunny or something like that. I don't necessarily remember. And I'm like, I'm not quitting. And he's like, this isn't like a choice. I'm ordering you to get in the vehicle. And I was just like, I was like pissed. I was so pissed. I was like cussing her because I was like, I'm not gonna make it then, right? Like, I'm going back to my old unit. And as much as like there's aspects of being in the Hilo platoon I like there's a difference between stay and and the other units. And that sucked. So the rest of the drive, and I'm trying to remember if they still did the interview anyway with it, but no, they didn't. Maybe we did do the interview, or maybe we didn't. I don't necessarily particularly remember with that one. Yeah, I think we still did the interview, but nobody finished that 12.5-mile pack run. All the rest of them ended up getting put in the vehicle too. And so what they end up deciding to do is they end up pulling us over to stay anyway. But the condition was that we passed the next in-doc. But the last ones that basically weren't going to quit were asked to still come over to the unit if we wanted to come over to the unit. Again, the condition was that, you know, we pass the next in-doc, that we have to take it. And I'm like, heck yeah. You know, I looked at it as a huge opportunity. Because I got to actually learn more than everybody that's just taking an in-doc for the first time and then have to learn a bunch of stuff. So I was already learning. I was just like any other pig, that had passed indoc at that point. And they treated us that way, as though we had passed, which was kind of nice. Um, and then we did the next indoc, and I just, like, destroyed that indoc, I felt. It helped. I knew everything to expect. And believe it or not, one of the big difference makers was, so before the 12.5 mile pack run, like, eating your full emery, not just kind of like picking and choosing or anything. Like, you eat the whole thing, and the other thing was literally salt packets and taking a salt pack before you start, the water and everything else like that, pushing that, because cramps are one of the bigger things that, whether you want to or not, may end up putting you in a situation where you can't continue. And I didn't cramp up at all. And, you're starting to watch people start cramping up and or falling out or falling behind because of it. And I crossed the line of the 12.5 mile pack run several minutes before the next person. And then, so you got extra recoup time, right? So now we got the obstacle course twice. And I got all this extra recoup time. So I just, like, flew through that too. And the PT, I had, and I was feeling good, and the salt really helped my body retain the water. So there's things that I learned from even the first time to the second time that I take it that, somebody else might have been able to do better than what they performed, but a simple nutrition aspect.
Yeah.
Totally changing things. I'd also taken more B vitamins and some different vitamins and stuff like that end up having to get pre-approved because they want to make sure that you're not taking particular performance enhancers to while you're doing the induct. So just the nutrition aspect, how much that changed things, and how much I felt, when I got done. So I was feeling pretty good afterwards, and I was excited to be part of the platoon at that point, and did a lot of cool different things from stalking. I was still with them it was all the way at CAX, Combined Arms Exercise Training. It was probably one of the best training missions I ever did. Like, I'll never forget. Stay with that. We did row the rails of a Huey insertion, and we kind of got dropped off on the side of a mountain. And my side happened to be the highest corner off of the mountain, because you got the skid to come in, and they only can get one angle in. And it was a good drop. Like, my whole body collapsed because the weight of the packs and everything else like that. And we were supposed to be out observing for like a week. So we're out there ended up being a 4-man team. And you have everything, all your food to last week. The biggest thing, though, at CAX, because it's desert training, with water. So we had one guy carrying 5 gallons of water. We had each of us carrying no less than 16 quarts, plus the guy with 5 gallons of water was carrying 16 quarts. And it just, and we actually was siphoning, rationing out our water. When we were waiting to hit the end for extract, it was rough. But it was some of the coolest training, some of the best ranges that we did. So we did like a squad attack range as a sniper. So you got like constantly they're popping up at different ranges. If I remember right, it was like out to 800 or 1,000.
So were you getting on the gun then on that? Were they letting you do that? Okay, that's cool.
So I was actually, when I was in, other than the designation, we rotated everything what I felt fairly equally through training. Everything was like you were a sniper, but they were your team leader. Like if it ever come down to combat, primarily, they would be the primary one, but that doesn't mean that you might not have to take your rotation on the gun and everything too. You were based their spotter. I had Sergeant McDaniel was my team leader, and he was a very good sniper, and that was nice. It's always nice when your mentors are good at what they do. It was just nice working with them and learning all the different skills, from the stalking side. Stalking side, I wasn't too bad at. I think the biggest thing is the mosquitoes, and stuff like that. Mosquitoes drove me nuts. And so you just got to take it. They're eating you live out being out in Lejeune. That was the worst thing is this.
I keep forgetting you're in Lejeune. I was Hawaii, so my experience is different.
Well, even
coming
from boot camp. Boot camp was the fire ants. You know, I was like so glad I went to boot camp out in Pendleton because I for whatever reason I could deal with fire ants, you know, crawling up your arms and stuff while you're in the sand doing push-ups and stuff versus mosquitoes. Mosquitoes would have drove me nuts. But yeah, mosquitoes is honestly for me the hardest part, probably the hardest part about stalking. Growing up on a farm in the woods and hunting and everything else like that, and having a really good mentor, you learn. I don't know whether you're taught them to be medians, you know, basically vegetation, and we've heard them as medians between you and your objective or potential observer or threat. You know, that in how you maneuver and place that the medians between you and them so that you remain concealed. And probably some of the best stuff I learned was how to use terrain, because if you can use terrain, there's points literally walking.
Oh yeah, we did that. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. There's like, okay, we're good, and guys
you just know where your lane is. If you're looking at it and it comes up and there's a nice peak or a hill in there, and you can utilize that. So that was some of the best advice I got, because there's guys that they're sitting there like low crawling from the start, and or just moving so slow, and here I am like just walking up, and then you kind of get low and kind of scoot yourself over and where you got another actual hard median versus, you know, where it's, you know, and then you got vegetation and stuff like that, you know, and how thick it is or heavy it is or brush.
You can pull it too.
Yeah, and brush and stuff like that. So it's it was kind of a fun, challenging experience for me. At the same time, like, oh man, you spend hours and you think you're so close to taking your shot, or you took your first shot, you know, because how we do it, you'd stalk your way up, you know, and you'd take your first shot, and if you got your first shot up, I believe it was like you're already at like 70% of your total points, if I remember
yeah
right.
it was like, oh man, I don't remember how much total time. I think we had like 4 hours, or my memory's starting to go, so I don't know if it was like 4 hours or maybe it was 2 or 3 hours. But yeah, once you got in position, you got your shot, then it's like that. Then the big deal is, can you read the card, you know? And then
you got 70.
Yeah, and then they say they don't do it, but they mow the lawn. You know, some of the instructors try to hunt for you, but if they did it correctly, they just can't find you. You know, or they, you know, I did pretty well with the stalking, so with the ghillies. Yeah. So, but that was cool. Those are some cool skills that you know, we never did it in combat, but it was cool to like do. I had kind of like jungle, so it was cool to be in the Hawaii course doing stalking.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I feel bad for the Pendleton guys because it's all like grass stalks. It's kind of shitty, you know. But Hawaii was cool. I don't know what Lejeune's like, but you know, Hawaii was pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty sweet though. Yeah.
No, it was just. It was like up my alley. Yeah. It was just kind of like one of those things like I really enjoyed doing, and the challenge, and it's totally different when you got somebody that's looking down, spotting scopes or binos, just like looking for you, and you have lanes you got to stay between, you know, and that's what you got to move on, and then you got to take your shot, and they got neutral people walking around and a stick, you know, if they can touch you with that stick, all right, they found you basically. And I remember a few times where it was like close. They're walking. I actually remember one time where they walked a walker, which is a neutral person that's out there, and they start out within so many feet of where the shooter was. So that's the other advantage of the person with the binos is the person that did the shot. They know that this neutral person is within so many feet. I don't remember whether it was 25 or 20 or
something
50
like
or
that.
something.
Yeah.
Right. So they're already starting like somewhat close to where you're at. And I remember one time where they're walking the guy, and if they would have stopped him, they would have got me. I was just like, you know, you're just sitting there, you're just waiting. It's like waiting to get your grade on a test, right? You're just waiting for the teacher to hand it back, and you're just maintaining being as still as you can, right? Yeah. And they end up having them like left base and like 6 steps or 9 steps, and I was just like, oh, this is like you just want to like, but you're still like not moving.
It's a good feeling when I remember them trying to mow the lawn on me, and they were trying to find me, and I'm like, you don't know where I am. Like I knew it. I was like way too confident. I was like, you don't know where I am, and they just went like a whole nother like a wrong direction, and I heard him over the radio, like he's right there. He's fucking right there, and I was not even close. Like I was like 30 foot, you know. And then finally, they're like the walker, the instructor was like, "Nagel, where are you at?" I'm like, "I'm over here." And then like I heard him goes, "He's not even in the area." like they were like and they were cool, like the instructor, but they could tell they were like really trying to get really like they had it out for you. And it was cool with the instructor just being like, "He's not even in the fucking area." Like you're not even close. But yeah, I know what you mean. That was cool. And those are fun. I mean, that's just like testing your skills. Right. You know, as somebody, you know, and then were you guys doing that like in training at the platoon level or?
Yeah, at the platoon level, we'd go out there. In fact, that's where we did probably most of it, most of the stalking that I did. Because when we got to the school and when I was at the school, I think I'd end up getting dropped before they really got into the stalking. I feel like.
Did you stalk? I mean, like, because sometimes they would split it up. We end up getting split up. Our stalking. Well, how did they? Yeah, because we did different lanes, so they would do, not back to back to back. I can't remember how we did it. Maybe we did do it in 1 week, but it was like we had different lanes, obviously. So it was like this lane, this lane, this lane, this lane, and they chose some. Yeah, we had one lane we showed up to in the Kahukus, I think it was. It was supposed to be like a grass stalk, and they had mowed the lawn, like, or they had the area, so it was gonna be like super long. I don't want to say elephant grass, but super long grass. It was Hawaii. And they just like whoever was the groundskeeper just literally just took the lawnmower to it, and so they were like, we showed up and they went like, oh shit, and they had to like pivot to like a backup, which I don't think they had, so they were like, oh shit, we need to like figure something out, and that was a rough. I think it was me and one other guy were the only ones that shot hundreds that day, and then everybody else it was a fucked up lane. It was kind of a fucked up lane.
Yeah.
You know, so, but no, yeah, I think. And I don't know if we split them up into like two different weeks. I don't know. It's kind of a blur now to me. But I know we had them different days. Yeah. But I can't remember if we split them up into different weeks, like different, like first half or second half or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, let's say memorably wise and training wise, that all the stuff at Stay was huge on my list training wise. I had some of the stuff at BRC that was nice. Kind of we spent a ton of time in the pool. Like a ton of time. I feel like we'd literally be there almost all day for the majority of the time that I was there before I got the hypothermia and the pool. It'd be laps. You get in warm up laps, and warm up laps would be like, I don't honestly remember the specific amount, but it was like 20 laps warm up before we even got into it, doing anything. And everybody already kind of knew how to swim, so it wasn't like, hey, you're there learning how to swim. It was just building up your performance level and, you know, going through different motions, you know, training wise. I guess I don't necessarily even really remember a ton about other than being in the pool all the time a lot. I remember the UDTs because they're like short shorts that barely come down. And that probably actually being the most awkward part of it all is like running around with the UDT shorts. I'm like, are these even short?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you were doing, so you ended up getting into or going to sniper school and everything like that. So how long were you in Stay and like what all happened? You wanted to get into that?
So it was about 9 months that I was in Stay.
You did CAX. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
Was that before deployment? Like, did they do a deployment or how did that work?
So they hadn't done a deployment yet. So CAX was kind of like a part of workups for events.
Yeah, because we did CAX, but it was typically right before we deployed. Did you end up deploying with them too? Or
so I was looking at the school. I think I was, if I remember right, right after we got back from CAX time frame-ish is when I was going to school.
Oh, okay.
And so I went to school, and then I ended up getting dropped at school. I mean, didn't make the smartest choice, you know, type deal. It was like I was struggling on the land nav course, you know, and on the land nav course, I don't know how it is now, but back then it was like a dog tag on the side of a tree that you're looking for that had a number, and you basically had to get the numbers right when you come back, and the different points would be like a click apart. You might have swamps and all sorts of different terrain and stuff that you got to navigate around and through just to get to it. And I feel like part of it was in getting dropped from Recon was quite a bit. Uh, that was hard on me mentally, you know, and I was struggling on it, and I just, for whatever reason, I knew other people were doing kind of their own things. That doesn't make my decision any better in helping them get through the land nav course and stuff like that. And I ended up deciding to use a GPS for it when I needed to. Like, I tried to do it all right, and if it kind of come down to like just wasn't happening, then I'd turn around and pull it out and utilize it. And I actually think I really only used it a couple times, which is even worse on it all. Like, I just shouldn't have done it. And my partner had apparently ratted me out. Like,
you guys had partners when you were doing it?
So not when we're actually doing the land nav.
Oh, okay.
But my partner for like on the shooting range and everything else at the school.
Yeah.
He was doing his own thing to help him on the land nav course, and that probably didn't help him much either to turn around and rat on somebody else or whatever for it. Nonetheless, like, I accept responsibility. Like, it was my decision I made. It wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have gotten dropped, you know, if I wouldn't have made that decision. But to this day, out of all my decisions in the Marine Corps, that is probably that's if there's one to take back, it would be that one. You spend so much time preparing for something and training for something and believing like that was so much, like that was your place to be. Like, I was good, especially on the range. You know, I felt I was good when it come to hand to hand. Not like stay you really use hand to hand that much, but like as a infantry combat person, I felt like I was pretty good. Call for fire, you know, for example, was another area I was good at. I wasn't amazing at talking, but I wasn't bad, you know, type deal. And someone might been, I think a fair amount of people have a degree of an ego and cockiness to be able to make it in those units, and you almost have to be competitive. Like, I almost don't feel like a non-competitive person would ever like make it through some of that stuff. Like, you almost have to have a degree of competitiveness. And I feel like I just always took it to the next level. I feel like I had less distractions for the most part during my off time. So yeah, I ended up making the decision, but when the instructors basically called me off to the side and asked me about it, like, I knew my answer was gonna drop me from the school. But I knew lying about it, I didn't feel right lying about it. You know, I know people that did and different things, and you'll hear people on podcasts that even made different units and stuff like that. And sometimes I'm like, like, what if I did or what not? But like, keeping my integrity with that, I think either way, like, I made the decision, it was wrong. Consequences needed to come at some point. And so I was asked, you know, and I asked them, I was like, do you really want to ask me that question? Because I can't lie to you. I got too much respect for you, because I do. Like, even yourself, I can't say how much respect I got for other guys that are actual snipers. And I was like, I can't lie to you. And he's like, I have to ask. And I'm like, I acknowledged I did, and I went through like, well, how are you doing it? Because you get searched, like, you're down to your underwear, and they go through the whole search process, all your stuff and everything else like that. So they're like, you know, how are you doing it? And I told them, and they're just like, they gave me kudos for being able to pull it off and do what I did or whatever, and kudos for.
Do you know why your partner ratted on you, or was it just kind of like?
I honestly don't know. Like, I don't know, because I feel like we actually helped each other. Like I said on the range in our discussions earlier, like, we clicked. Like, we were on, and I feel like with somebody else, like, I might not have been as good. Like, having been on the range, when that target came up, we'd literally already known where the last round probably went, right? Already made the adjustments, was already ready. And literally as soon as that target came up, the round was going on range. Like, it was probably some of the smoothest shit that you've ever seen, right? And I'm impressed myself. Like, I don't. we were on.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're hot
No, I
together
get
on
it.
the
When you're
range.
on it, you're on
So
it.
yeah, and he was part of that. You know, your observer is huge. You know, being able to get, you know, the spotting scope just out of focus and now see the mirage and the vapor trail and everything else like that, a bullet, being able to call a shot, you know, to be able to know and make the right adjustments. So when that target is coming up, it's literally was about enough to verify because they mark, you know, where your shot went. Yep, that's right where it was. My adjustments were right, and like as that, I felt like I was already pulling the trigger before it even like settled because the target will go up and it'll kind of like just that little bit, you know, once it goes up, and it was like the round is going down, and I almost feel like we're competitive against each other, on that, which made us both even better, you know, type deal. I feel like, but because of knowing what he was doing himself and that he was not properly doing the land of himself, cheating in a way, that was the hardest part. I'm like, why would he have done it? I don't get it. Yeah. You know, type deal. It still to this day never made sense. And I don't know. I never seen him after that. You pack your bags and go, and he was from a different unit.
Oh, okay.
My understanding is he ended up getting dropped sometime after.
Oh, after
you
that
know,
too. Okay.
Whether some of it being because of that or not, I really don't know.
Yeah, because once they, I mean, at least when I was going through, if you get a target on your back, you get a target on your back. You know, like guys they're gonna get dropped. they're gonna find a way to drop you. You know,
right? I think that's the thing in those schools. Like
I said, something happened there. If he ratted you out, there's a reason that they talked to him. You know, there's something there. If they didn't know what was going on with you, and there's something that he clicked or something happened with him. I mean, that's what I'm kind of making of it, which is, you know, obviously you did what you did, but it's also those things. Cause I know what you mean, man. You're just trying to get through the school and get there. And how many times you heard guys like, oh yeah, I did this, that, and that. And then they squirrel their way through and make it. But like, if they dropped him for something else later down the road, and doesn't feel like there's a reason that he would have ratted on you. There's probably a reason why they snatched him up or something happened with him. At least that's my my analysis. But
yeah, it's one of those things where I'm not gonna be worked up or concerned about. I'm a huge person about, you know, you make a bad choice, you make a mistake, that's your own responsibility. Whether you got caught or somebody told on you or whatever the deal is, it doesn't matter. Like it was your decision. You put that in play to ever be used or hurt yourself. So I mean that's 100 regardless of them and their decisions, 100% on me. And I actually think that helped me in some ways. You know, like the hardest thing was actually coming back and being called in, you know, the snipers and
the hooch,
the platoon sergeant and stuff like that. It was the barracks and stuff. Went back with my unit now. And because of being integrity violations when you're not with a platoon anymore. So it's like, where do I go next? And but having the conversation, like they're like, apparently I was one of the people that they're like, I was betting on you to be the one person for sure that would make it through. And they knew that this meant everything to me and that it was a stupid decision. You know, there was no yelling, there was no talking down to me. It was probably one of the hardest conversations, you know, and respect both ways, you know, on me letting them down because I let myself down a ton, but I also know how much work that they invest in all the pigs and all the rest of the guys in the unit in training them and preparing them. And I let them down, you know, and that was probably one of the hardest things. I think them approaching it that way, even in the conversation, was hard too because I knew it. Like it was one of those things kind of back and forth. And they gave me kudos again, you know, for being honest about it. You know, it kind of is what it is and accepting responsibility. But again, it is what it is, and then it's what's next in my path in the military.
So then, after all that happened, what was next? You know.
So the company commander wanted to keep me. The company commander had actually ran an indoc after I'd already passed my indoc and was with her. We ran another indoc, and the company commander ran the indoc. And I'd also worked directly with him on some indirect fire, call for fire missions in the simulation type of rooms and stuff like that we did. So he actually got to see what I'm capable of, my knowledge firsthand. I ran next to him on that 12.5 mile pack run
Oh, nice,
as I'm
yeah.
running the in dock because he was one of the faster ones. I have a ton of respect for him, and he wanted to keep me in the unit. You know, it is also helpful to have somebody that has that background and knowledge, you know, beyond, but also the Hilo Cell platoon side and everything else like that too. So he wanted to keep me in the company, and so he was trying to figure out where. And Cat platoon, he could put me in Cat platoon as like a chief scout. Normally, infantry people aren't in Cat platoon, but it's kind of like the one position that he could kind of put me in, and I'd be bring capabilities to the unit, like call for fire and things like that. I was supposed to be in charge of, you know, when they dismount and go to ground operations and things like that. But I feel like things didn't necessarily really mesh well with the unit just in general and why I was supposed to be there and what I was doing. I never really felt like I was being utilized for that. And I was just kind of like, well, the company commander wanted me there, so they just kind of, I was like an add-on that was just there and never really utilized. So I felt like I was kind of being a waste of my skills, you know, to a degree. Um, I also didn't feel like some of the command above me. I stood up for my guys. I'd speak up for my guys, and I don't think they liked that, especially when I felt like things were not being done right or was wrong. And with that, they decided to kind of come after me, like, okay, I'm this horrible Marine and all these bad things about me or whatever type deal that, you know, should probably take rank, and all this stuff was kind of what they're coming at me with. And but I wasn't necessarily I wasn't in the wrong. At least I still don't feel like I was in the wrong on any of it, even on some of the knowledge side, and not to their fault, just their background. And they'd also, I think they'd spent too much time as a drill instructor, and they brought that over to the unit, and they didn't have enough of background, maybe not to their fault, of actual Cat platoon, and or maybe listen to some of the different section leaders and stuff like that, because that Cat platoon was a good unit, and they had some really good section leaders that really knew their stuff, and I feel like they ran it a lot more like a boot camp platoon than turn around and relying on these section leaders and listening to the section leaders, and a lot more games and stuff like that, games on weekends. Hey, we're having an inspection on the weekend. We're supposed to got a deployment come out, you know, and some of my understanding reason was because they get in trouble. They can't get in trouble on the weekend if they're in here doing an inspection. So we'd be the one unit that'd be not out on the town or with our families or whatever it is, and we are doing an inspection on the weekend. And I felt, because I was more in a leadership position at that point, it's my position to speak up for my guys, you know, and I did that a little more than they liked, which then gave me a lot more extra BS punishments, like cleaning the locker room or whatever. And I still maintained my respect to the rank or whatever. And the company commander again, and actually called me off to the side and was like, "Are you okay? Something just doesn't seem right with you." And I'm like, again, I can't lie, right? And even let's just say I did and was like, "Oh yeah, everything's fine, sir," you know. And then something blows up big 2 months down the road, and now I'm trying to tell him that, well, things weren't exactly fine, and this has all been going on for how long. So I spoke freely on exactly what my issues and what was going on and why, and the conversation didn't skip rank. I specifically spoke to my command directly on it. There's nothing that I jumped around or behind, and they didn't like that. So then I was attacked again, and basically the company commander asked, you know, if I could give him some time to handle it, and I had a lot of respect for him, so I kind of gave it to him. But some more things had happened, and it had kind of blown up, and it actually led to, it ended up going all the way up to the base commander. on it. I don't necessarily know if it rated that, but how the process ended up going, like it went up their ways. I didn't find out till later, but what I was doing, I did right. You know, it's hard when somebody's attacking you to still not respect rank and still, you know, do what you're supposed to do and or do things that you shouldn't have to be doing because you're told to do it, but you're doing it, you know, at that time, like cleaning a wall locker, gear locker for the platoon while everybody else is out on libo again before deployment. So the company commander still wanted to keep me, you know, and I think again the integrity, the ability to count on somebody that's going to be honest, that's even when he himself makes a poor choice, will be honest. And I think that was easier that happened first before it's now somebody else and what they're saying and what they're trying to say against you, you know, and being honest too. And in that point, you know, I think the company commander knew that he could count on that he was going to get my actual input and opinion on things when he asked for it. And my background of now having been in a regular Hilo cell platoon, you know, my time in stay, my time in the cat platoon and understanding a lot more in the infantry, weapons, capabilities. You know, I got to understand how cat platoon maneuvered, you know, max effective range of a tow missile, you know, 50 cal Mark 19, you know. So I understood the battlefield from a larger, broader viewpoint, you know, like even in stay, because a lot of times you're watching objective and you are aware of how everybody else is moving and their capabilities, and you're basically an advisor to the battalion commander in a lot of ways. Especially if you see like something happening and you know another unit could particularly be maneuvered or utilized in a certain way, like, hey, this is what I see, you know, and they're like, a lot of times they're going to respect and take that and go for that, you know. Some of it might be just understanding ranges, because if you can outrange the enemy and they can't hurt you, utilize those assets, you know. So yeah, the company commander really wanted to keep me still, and so he's like, well, what if you come and work directly for me and the master sergeant as the police sergeant? And 3 years in, you know, I think I was a fresh corporal at that point. Maybe I wasn't a corporal. I don't necessarily remember when specifically I picked up, you know, but 3 years in, and that's a senior sergeant position usually. And so I'm like, I'll take that, because it's nice, because I have maneuverability, you know. A lot of times a good leader, a good company commander is going to be, you know, where the action largely is or needs to be, and I'm not necessarily on his hip anyway. I was more directly for the master sergeant, and who is also a battalion ops chief. A very good leader, very knowledgeable. I learned a lot from him as well, but I also was able to bring in, if needed, capabilities like indirect fire, to bounce stuff off of, whether it be master sergeant, just, hey, this is, you know, I knew I could speak if I seen something, you know, and he would listen. Usually I had enough respect that he would usually listen to me. Not saying that he would make the choice that I necessarily would, but he would listen, and we'd usually work through things, and I felt like a team, like kind of like we're on the same level, even though he wasn't. He did have a lot more experience in different areas too. And I got added on, like I was weight control NCO, I was barracks NCO, I was responsible for all the weapons company assets, gears, like $2.2 million worth of gear, essentially. I didn't necessarily need to directly responsible. I need to know who was, if, you know, was signed out to somebody. The condition, you know, stuff need to be replaced and everything else like that. So I had a bunch of other responsibilities as well, and I kind of felt like I stepped up even more. Yeah. I was like, because he was willing to, you know, step out himself and believe in me and see, you know, what I had to offer him. Like, I literally knew where, if it was a pack of 12 pencils, like I knew where it was. Like I went through the gear locker. Everything was a mess. That was part of the reason a previous sergeant that was there wasn't as good as they were hoping, I think, and they're looking to replace that so that it kind of fit timing wise in there. And I turned around and went through, cleaned out everything, and it was like all our assets in the different areas. I knew, like how many batteries, how many of everything, all the way down to pens and pencils to, the armory is responsible for all that stuff, but basically verification that there's not one missing in there or something. So we'd have our kind of inspection go through over that to be responsible for their student my report. But I feel like it was nice because there's like no micromanaging at all. But it also helped I went ahead right away in the morning, met with Master Sergeant, like, this is where things are at, and I'd go and update him. I'd take initiative on a lot of things, so he didn't really have to be like, hey, where the heck's this, or what the heck's going on with that? And, I was on top of things, giving him updates, giving him reports, like if I was supposed to go, say, to SIF or something, all right, I went there, and they're closed for whatever reason. They're going to be built. Well, they were closed. This is what my follow-on plan is, type deal. I was, well, I got this I need to do, so, it was just, it was very... Man, it was nice. Yeah. Like, there was the closest to feeling like I was back at stay. Yeah. To a degree. Because, in fact, I'd almost kind of say better. Yeah. Because in stay, I wasn't an actual sniper. Yeah. And there is a slight difference in treatment. Yeah. Whether you're an actual sniper or whether you're a pig. Not horribly, but there is. Yeah. Yeah. Enough. And so... Yeah, it was just really nice to let me do my thing. And I remember some of them, the command from because I was still in the same company, from the Capitoon would be like, oh, we need you to clean the company office, or whatever the case is, Saturday or whatever type deal. And I just go to Master Sergeant, I'm like, Master Sergeant, just letting you know, got any... Turned around and said I need to clean the company office this Saturday because, like, I was told to do it by somebody a higher rank or whatever the case is. So I'm not going to say... No, I'm not, but I'm going to go to who, chain of command, be like, this is just letting you know. He's like, no, you're not. I'll take care of it. I'll talk to him. Back to the respect and rank, I'd be like, just letting you know, Gunny. Yeah. Master Sergeant doesn't want me to clean the... so has me doing this instead, or, this is what come out of it, So, I mean, it was nice. It was nice that they had my back, type deal. But at the same time, I had to perform, and I don't think everybody necessarily would have had the same opportunities. I mean, I think a lot of times you really have to build back your talk a little bit. You have to be that person. I guess that's kind of where it paid off. In grinding, the extra grind on the other aspect. But I also think it's easier when it's part of like who you are. Like, it didn't feel like work. Quite as much. Like if you're the person that probably joined the Marines because of college. To get college paid for or something. Like, I just don't see it being the same, because I don't necessarily see, it may have been for some, but for them, that might have not been their thing. Yeah. To me, it didn't really feel like going to work most days. Like now going to work, like it feels like going to work. Yeah. Then I felt like, man, I'm getting paid to do this. I'm getting paid to go work out. I'm getting paid to stay in shape. I'm getting paid to blow rounds down range, type deal. I'm getting paid to like get better at it. Yeah, exactly. I'm actually being provided some of the best like instruction that I could get in all those areas. I'm like,
it's awesome. Yeah.
I'm like, even if it's not a lot, like I'm still getting paid to do that. Like if I had money and wasn't like in a service or something, like I'd be like, hey, I'd pay to do this recreationally.
So what led you guys you're doing that? What leads you into Kosovo? What leads you into that next deployment then?
So that next deployment was just a regular rotation.
Sorry.
The next deployment was part of the regular rotation. We didn't necessarily know where we were going or what. We were supposed to be emergency forces, wherever over there. And my wife was pregnant prior to leaving, and she was actually, I believe, expected to be born like right after we deployed. So that was kind of a hard point. I'm a huge family person, and obviously one of the reasons of having a kid, it was something intentional and tried for. but she ended up being born early and was actually born like the day we're supposed to be driving our vehicles up on the LCAX and on the ship. So she ended up being level, I believe it was like level 3 intensive care or whatever.
Okay.
And so a little bit
Yeah.
different type situation. Maybe under normal circumstances, just being born, they might have let me stay back. I don't know. They let me stay back for like 2 weeks and get her through that, and then get them back home, where there's added support. And then I flew out there and met up with them. So basically, I missed the boat ride over, which is not the most exciting thing, ever. And even training capabilities and staying in shape in the gym access is just, it's not the same anyway. So I don't feel like I really missed a lot that I would have necessarily wanted to be a part of. And getting flown over there and then flying right into, all right, we're going into Kosovo.
Yeah.
Like type
Was
deal.
that planned for Kosovo, or was that?
So I don't, from my understanding, I don't have access to all the intel necessarily, but I don't believe it was planned until the deployment was underway. And I don't necessarily know what exactly, to what extent I can talk about or not, but believe it or not, the Kosovo reason for us being there actually had somewhat to do with Iraq. In fact, it mostly had to do with Iraq. Kosovo was kind of
so kind of put together. What year was this? And like you said, if you're
so that would have been 2002, 2003. So
Okay.
Kosovo was in a peaceful kind of standing point. They actually had us removing flak and Kevlars and stuff while there, unless like we're under fire. So it was a very peaceful situation. We were there to, I don't even know if like, because I don't know whether I was even supposed to know what I kind of know about it, and with that, like, to what extent necessarily I wasn't in no official meetings necessarily, so whether it's truthful or not, but it makes a lot of sense. Basically, stuff was moving to Iraq from Europe, and we were to go in kind of as a show of force, intercept it if we have to, but it kind of disrupted that whole supply chain that was moving underground. And it was assets that could have been effective or used against us later on during the actual invasion. We didn't know that the invasion was probably being planned at that point or in the works or whatever. But that was what it was for. Apparently, like, moving of anything, weaponry wise, just completely shut down. So, I mean, it was kind of simple mission for us. And I spent a lot of time, because of my position, just manning radios in the command control center and knowing where kind of everybody was at. So it wasn't anything special or hoorah for me or whatever. It was nice because it was my first experience on a higher command level on the radios. And one of the things I was kind of involved in was kind of like the underground, like, MMA scene. So when I joined in '99 was the early years of like UFC and stuff. So like we had a lot of underground hand-to-hand MMA stuff where it's kind of like Fight Club type deal. And higher usually look the other way because they want us to be effective at what we did. But there was obviously safety levels and points to it. Like, I can't be pissed off at you and us just start fighting. There's a difference between that and the competitive hand-to-hand MMA style stuff, like kind of like challenge, kind of like a challenge you had to a wrestling match, only it was an MMA type match. And I had a match that basically got started between one of the other guys that was in headquarters, and it's like safety wise, it's like, all right, we make sure don't have anything that can cut the other person on each other. Like, it's literally, you go through kind of like safety aspects before you end up competing. And what I didn't know, or him know, is his button on his blouse had turned around and broke in half, right? Well, when I went to submit him, I had him locked up, but his arm was up there or whatever the case is. Well, it had cut, and it was a big gouge into his head that had happened from this button, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a bigger injury. And here we are after this, right? Like, okay, he tapped out and we're all done, and we're sitting there.
Well, head injuries bleed like crazy. Yeah.
We're sitting there in the command center where the radios and where I'd normally be working the radios or something like that. During that point, it was just my rotation where I wasn't on that. And we're in here. I got like the old style video recorder where you pulled out the side and you can sit there. I'm recording him getting stitch up. I'm pretty sure he was seeing stitch up, but it being taken care of by our corpsman. Our corpsman was really awesome too at that time. But we're kind of like joking, laughing around about it. And it's huge blood just kind of like coming down, whatever type deal. And I don't know who it was, first sergeant or somebody come in and about what the heck happened and an investigation and everything else like that. And here I am sitting there like about who did it and everything else like that. Well, again, like I'm not going to lie or whatever to you, but like probably a bad idea to be sitting here recording this. So I like close it and head back to, our berthing area, which is like kind of like a tent area. And I was sitting in there and come through with a whole investigation side about it all, and we weren't pissed off. We weren't angry with each other. It was none of that. And the fact of like checking, going through things and that being the button, type deal, they're just like, we're in a combat environment. So like when even things like that happen, it has to go way up the chain of command for combat readiness. Like, okay, we had an injury and it's this level, and the fact that he needed like stitches and things like that, it just had to go way higher. So my sergeant kind of had a talk with me. He was like, I understand and know like your history, because I was fairly well known in that circuit, if you want to call it. And being a part of that, and he's like, normally don't care, but we're in a combat readiness level. It's like, so if you can just kind of wait until you get back from deployment. And I was like, Roger that, my sergeant. So nothing ended up happening to me here, or the stitches turned around and he healed from that. But yeah, it was that was probably my big highlight combat situation of Kosovo. And
so you guys got once Kosovo finishes up, how long is it till you guys do the invasion then? Like, what's the workup doing that?
It was a good handful of months later from that. We were actually in Kosovo too during what's that German beer?
Oktoberfest.
Yeah, Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
So now I know it was October time, right?
Yeah.
Because so it was actually a German base, and we were kind of attached and extra tent set up. We were kind of like supporting them in a way, and it was Oktoberfest for them. Well, they were drinking and doing all that stuff and doing all their Oktoberfest stuff and going on base is the only thing beside our tent area, and they had their own like PX and different things like that. And I normally didn't really go over there, but I got over there a couple times. Well, here they are sitting there drinking away, and you got all these Marines that we can't drink at all because we're basically under our combat readiness status. And so that was kind of just an interesting time being there. And they kind of want to try to integrate us. So like, well, during the drinking competition, we'll pour something else in. I don't know what they put in, NA, beer, or whatever in the competition, but it wasn't the same,
It wasn't, no, yeah.
And for the drinkers that were Marines, that was just like, they were just,
it sucks, yeah. So that's okay. So then, like I said, you guys are, what's that life like? What's that like then knowing the invasion's coming? Like you said, you get off.
Well, we didn't really know yet. Yeah. So Kosovo was early in the whole deployment. We ended up actually doing operations in Djibouti in the Horn of Africa in support of something that was kind of already going on there. We weren't there that long either. Kind of had a different experience, but it kind of helped prepare us for actual combat, because there was a degree that could have potentially happened. I didn't witness, I didn't see it, but my understanding is there was a threat coming at the base. They'd found out what that base was particularly being used for and things like that, and there's a planned attack on it, and we basically dropped a big deterrent between them and us. So I don't think there's even any necessarily casualties, but it was, from my understanding, it was like this dust cloud just like rolled over them, and then like when the dust cloud went away, they weren't there anymore. Like they decided to turn around. Oh, nope, maybe not today, and packed it up and turned around and went home. So they never end up attacking the base, from my understanding. A lot of it wasn't firsthand, standing post. So it was a lot more kind of word being spread and coming back to through the command channels or whatever. But we didn't. It was mostly in support, kind of like a security extra added show force. Weren't there that long, and then we had pulled up back on ship again.
Nice. So then, like I said, you pulling back on ship, and that was kind of same thing for the rest of your deployment, just kind of hanging out on ship until you guys got back?
No, everything was pretty fluent. We had did the Kosovo, then we went into Horn of Africa.
Okay.
And then we went up, we did some training in UAE.
Okay.
And that was probably the biggest thing that kind of really set the preparation for the whole Iraq invasion.
Okay.
I remember stopping in Bahrain, whether that was before UAE or after. I don't know. Bahrain was kind of, cool. It was a pretty cool, nice city. That definitely a different culture.
I've been through there.
Same thing too. Like the malls and the amount of gold and stuff is a different level. Definitely beyond my pay grade on affordability and some of the stuff we went to see. But it was kind of cool to experience and see it. The people weren't negative or seemed friendly, and accepting all around. It was just kind of unique environment. Taxi drivers though is a little bit different. Our understanding kind of ahead of time is that they try to work you for as much money as they could, and they did. everything from things you learn on actually turning their meters on. Like sometimes they won't, and then they'll turn around and try to charge you X amount. And I'd actually had that happen in my taxi. Where he wanted to try and say how much it was, and I was like, it says right on the meter, and it kind of went back and forth, and I was like, call police or whatever the word was that we needed to learn for that country or whatever for it, and basically called his bluff on it, because then he was trying to kind of intimidate over that aspect, like, let's call the police, thinking you'll just work over, and actually I don't know how much it was, but it was a significant, like $100, more than what it should have been for a taxi that didn't go that far. And anyway, so he ended up just accepting the total amount that was on the meter that was supposed to and let us go, but that doesn't mean it didn't go through the whole process of trying to fleece us or intimidate us into something else.
Totally, yeah. So that deployment then, you guys invaded Iraq during that same deployment?
Yep. During the same
okay.
deployment,
All right. I thought you guys come back. Okay, so now that was all making more sense. I was like, oh, okay, got it. All right.
So this is the second deployment where all these things happen, and we end up having a lot of guys get stop loss because we were supposed to be back sooner. I believe the actual invasion had kind of kicked off or started right along that border point of when we're supposed to be heading back. But initially, when the invasion started, we were a MUSOC. We were supposed to be ready for embassy extraction, embassy reinforcement, down pilot missions, Hilo assault platoons, but Hilo assault platoons only go so far inland, so the biggest thing is embassy support in the whole region and area, and anything else that might come up urgency wise. And so we're on standby. We're watching the invasion from the TVs, the initial invasion,
like the initial push through.
And it was like you feel like you're just staring at the screens for like hours. That's what I remember. It's like everybody just standing around and watching, And
this was in Kuwait, or where were you guys at?
We're on ship at that point.
Or off ship?
On ship.
Oh, on ship. Got it. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So we'd moved up in kind of like a standby position. There's a lot of different countries where like an embassy extraction reinforcement may need to take place. So we're ready for that. If I remember right, we're even geared up. May have even been staged. I'm not sure for something. Just you never know what it's going to be necessarily. I know we're at an elevated level. I just don't recall specifically what it was at that point. And then there end up being some gaps that were in the assault that they wanted to fill, and some of it had made news or whatever. They kind of exploited some of the gaps, unintentionally or intentionally. I don't necessarily know, but we ended up getting called in to be part of the invasion then. So we're offloading quickly and pushing up, and were trailing initial forces till about Nasiriyah, from my understanding, that's where some of the other units took some friendly fire, and we're in combat, and that's where we kind of pushed through that combat element, and I believe became the leading force for a portion of time until we hit our area operations that we finished our time out of in the invasion, which is El Cut area.
Okay.
Is about where we kind of stopped and held for an AO for the rest of our time there.
So how was that for you? I mean, like, you guys in the Humvee all excited, like, holy shit, we're doing it? This is real?
It was like you don't know what to expect, right? It's like you've seen some of the Scud missiles and stuff like that coming hitting other elements. Like we got the gas mask stuff ready. We practiced and drilled for that. You can see the oil fields and stuff like that burning kind of early on. I remember when we first passed into Iraq, there's that first town, the kids, like, nutrition-wise, really hungry, really wanted food, and I don't know if it had always been that way or if it was because of the situation in the war. My understanding, there was kind of a poorer city that wasn't very well off in the first place, but I actually kind of feel bad because, like, I was a driver, had a mass sergeant, was in my vehicle, and a company corpsman, and I was a high back, and then we got, meds and supplies and everything else like that in our position on the convoy, and we had the doors off because during the invasion we didn't have up armored vehicles yet, and all we had was like canvas doors. And we're like, all this canvas door is gonna do is slow down my time if I need to get up. It's not gonna stop any bullets. It's not gonna whatever. So we literally just pulled the doors off and are riding without the doors on. And this kid had, as we're driving through this town, had tried getting in the vehicle. Afterwards, I think it was an MRE that he was after, because after a few of the units prior, coming through, they got to know what an MRE was, and that was food and things like that. So after the aspect, I think that's what he was after. But there's other assets that he could have grabbed, weapons-wise and things like that. I had one of my own weapons, that I had available, but being a driver, the closest thing I had and easiest access, was the Beretta, and I wasn't going to shoot the kid. It wasn't a combat type of situation, but, I had that in case something escalated, and I ended up kind of like pistol button him to get him out of the vehicle. And it did. It kind of like got him out of the vehicle and everything else like that. I just felt bad about it because it was a kid, and I don't think he meant harm. Like, I think he was just looking for food. At the same time, like, you have to protect your assets, and you never know if it would have been something more. I mean, what if he would have gotten a gun and even just playing around would have shot somebody or something, type deal. So it's kind of one of those situations it just sucked to be in. That was kind of the first city rolling through. It was just driving and driving. And we did most of our driving at night. So you got MVGs on, and you're looking at the little red eye or lights on the back of the Humvee in front of you, and you're like following them for hours, and you can kind of see a trail up, and following them for hours, and following them for hours. And we just, like, we weren't taking fire, weren't moving necessarily slow. We were going at a pretty good pace, just rolling through Iraq. And I feel like one of the days was about 12 hours, and the second day of driving was roughly about 14, from what I kind of recall at that time.
Were you guys just kind of cruising? You weren't making contact along the way, or was it just kind of like just go, go, go?
For the whole first day, it was just like go, go, go. Yeah. The second day, the majority was we had to slow down a little bit because a lead element had taken fire. So we didn't actually, our unit didn't take fire until north of Nasiriyah. Like, they were fighting in Nasiriyah, but we were one of the very few to only units, from my understanding, that had rolled through Nasiriyah and actually didn't get shot at. But I also hold that to the amount of level of discipline that our unit had, our experience. We see some units where, they got the 50 cal up and it's kind of like kicked back or whatever, and they're just rolling through. Like, our guys, if you're a gunner on a truck, you were pieing back and forth. You had both guns, on the gun. And so if we were to get ambushed, like, there's rounds coming back immediately. There's no, like, scurrying, get yourself to your gun, get on your gun, and then fire. Like, we started taking fire, they're getting a wall of fire back. And I think just our posture of alertness level, like, if you're gonna pick somebody to attack, who are you gonna pick?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and I just, nobody messed with us, whether that just be luck or our posture and stance. I'd like to think it was our posture and stance and kind of experience, because the Iraqi people, especially mujahideen and professional fighters, they're not dumb either. You know, I mean, they can pick up and they can tell different people, even Marines from Army, you know, when it come to later time in Iraq, in Ramadi. But it was about a half hour north of there. We took fire, and it was a decent little firefight. My specific vehicle or the vehicles right amongst us didn't, but the unit that did take fire, like from my understanding, like they just like destroyed them, like bad. And we end up having to stopping just north of there and circling back, from my understanding, because I think there's a potential body or something that we're trying to recover that we heard was in that town. And we went back looking for it, and the local people were like, yeah, they took off.
Yeah.
After they got in a firefight with us, they were like gone. And they were, the feedback to me was like they're joking about it. You know, like they're laughing at the mujahideen that, you know, it kind of turned around and taken off, you know, after facing engagement from us. And I think that kind of helped with our confidence too, you know. And there's different rules at that point. This is active combat, you know, the response was different. We were trained, you know, in our ambush, like you lay down heavy fire, suppressive fire to suppress the ambush, you know, immediately. And so it's a little bit different environment by far, you know. And we ended up pushing a little bit farther north than that. I feel like it was roughly an hour-ish north of that. That was like an intersection. There was a kind of like a town city on one corner, a gas station on another, and that was just like blank desert on the other corners of the intersection. That's kind of where we set up our AO and kind of managed operations out of. And we were only in Iraq a total of about a month. And they're trying to get us back for rotation because we already had guys that were stopped last and extended. And we're kind of sitting there. We'd taken fire a few times. I'd actually was sleeping and had rounds go over me. So with this gas station, because gas station windows, you know how they'll have like concrete wall that go up a certain ways, and then they'll have the big windows. Well, I use that concrete wall. I was like, I'll be okay because I'll be laying down sleeping. And I was like laying down sleeping. And one night we had taken rounds, and it was kind of from a direction kind of down one of the roads that was straight across from that. And I wake up to like tracers and rounds flying right overhead. And I like sit up, and I was comfortable enough because I was inside a building. Like I didn't have my Kevlar and flak and everything on. I was just sleeping in the thin sleeping bag, kind of barely on me. It got colder at night, but it was hot during that time. And scurried out and got all my stuff together. It was, I don't even know if I had my camis full on, but I had my helmet and my Kevlar on, and I'd pushed across the intersections. There's a waterway that I kind of went across. There's a little bit of land and then a waterway, and then there's that town city on the other side. Well, that's where I thought the biggest threat would be. You know, why would you attack us out in the wide out open with our capabilities? And at most, that'd be kind of down the road, kind of to, it would have been the southeast of us. And I pushed out, and I think there's one of the other guys with headquarters kind of pushed out with me. Abram had rolled up like almost right on top of us. And apparently they didn't even necessarily like see us, which is probably a good thing that they didn't think potentially think that we, you know, maybe we're the bad guy or the attacker or something too. But anyway, I was like, I yelled up to him. I was like, hey, to let us know if they're gonna fire that thing. I don't want my eardrums blown out. I mean, it's awesome. I got an Abram like right there, but I don't want to lose my hearing, you know, or my eardrums blown out. So I like, hey, just to let you know, we're like right here. And then after they kind of set into position or whatever, we end up just pulling back so that it could fire if it needed to. That and the capabilities that the Abram has is way more to offer than us, and we could always move up and fill if we needed to. The Abram just filled all the needs, thermal-wise and everything else on that area. But we ended up suppressing that fairly quickly. Didn't really hear much since. There's just some small stuff. We'd actually had a another incident where another unit was taking fire and we were pushing out that direction because we had like the company corpsmen and stuff like that with us. And we kind of took up kind of a staging point. Well, the people that there's a vehicle kind of coming up, kind of, we don't know necessarily if it circled around, kind of coming from an interesting direction. Like it was kind of trying to circle around or whatever. He just kind of raised some red flags, and Master Sergeant was like, hey, we need to stop them. And we take off just ourselves, company corpsman, myself and Master Sergeant, and we take off out in the open. It was a good couple miles that we end up to intercept and interject them. And pulled up on them, got them to stop, got them out, and they end up having weapons under the floorboards and everything else like that. And one of the guys that we captured was actually somebody significant, apparently. And all I remember, again, it was this company corpsman, Master Sergeant, and me, and Master Sergeant was doing the search. So I had the guys down on their, knees in a position, where it wasn't too aggressive yet, because we didn't necessarily know whether they're friendlies posed or had weapons or not or anything else like that. One of the guys was an older gentleman, but the other guy, the guy that we believe was somebody significant, like looking into his eyes is like nothing there. Like I'd never seen that before in my life. Like, you just like there's no soul in him. And he just there, and as soon as Master Sergeant kind of gave me a signal that there's weapons, then I dropped them down immediately, so they didn't realize that, oh, well, we found it, and then try to fight or maybe have something on them. We'd already searched them, but just to be safe, and we're taking them in custody at that point anyway, but drop them down immediately, and there was only a couple of us there to turn around and get in any sort of like fight. So immediately took the bigger guy down right away and got him flexi cuffed and got the other guy and got him loaded up, and I'd come back that the one guy was somebody significant, how significant or what, and what type of intel they got off him, I'm not necessarily sure, but I think it was intense, because when you're in a combat situation and guys are getting shot at and you're off doing your own thing in a vehicle, like it's a little bit different when you're maneuvering as a sniper, where you believe you're hidden and not known, but you're barreling in a vehicle out on your own. What if they would have had an ambush team set up somewhere and now you're the only vehicle? So that was definitely kind of an intense time, but looking back and how it played out is like kind of glad we did it,
because pretty cool. Yeah,
we got the guys
HVT,
yep, and the guns were come back to be believed that they were fired recently. Like when we found them, looking at them, they kind of smelled and seemed like they did. We're experts on that, but
I know what you mean though.
There's a good chance that they were the actual guys that had shot at our unit too. So that was just kind of a feel good feeling. But combat wise, that deployment for me, that was kind of an extent of it.
That's what I've heard with some of the invasion, the vets that I've talked to, buddies, that like some units got really into it, some it was kind of just hit or miss, and some, like I said, the guys like, oh yeah, well, we did it, and then it just kind of stopped, or they stopped at a certain phase line, and they're like, oh, then everybody else kept going, or whatever. So it's cool to hear everyone's stories from the invasion, like what that was like, and how they were interacting with it and whatnot.
Right.
So then what happened then after that? Did you guys, like we were talking before here, and I definitely want to get into Ramadi before I got a hard out here in about 30 minutes. So I just wanted to make sure we get into your Ramadi time. And then also you have the unique experience of getting called back, or like coming back in after EAS. So what was like that coming off what was that like coming off the invasion? Like the whole world knows about this, you going home EASing, that's a hell of a way to end your first enlistment, So
Right.
What was that like? The answer too quickly, but what was that like transitioning back to civilian life, and then civilian life back to, that's a turn and burn to come back to and then up fighting in Ramadi. Like what was that experience like?
Well, coming out of the initial invasion, like I didn't feel like that was real combat. Our particular unit actually didn't lose anybody. I think I believe we did have one injury, and it was somebody that rolled their ankle getting in foxhole during a firefight, and I think that was the one where I was talking about where the round had kind of come over where somebody else went to jump in there. foxhole or fighting hole and rolled their ankle or something.
Mm-hmm.
So thankfully,
Yeah, like thankfully,
I wasn't
yeah.
exposed to like our guys. We end up recovering a body and stuff like that from another unit and different things like that, and supported some of that stuff. But like the exposure and the actual real nitty gritty of combat didn't really exist. So there wasn't even much that come back. I'd say on my first deployment, the biggest thing come back was actually Djibouti, because that was worse than Tunisia on the starvation level and the way they lived and very minimally anything, at least some of them, and those that we were kind of exposed to more. And I mean, they could take a half aired up, beat up soccer ball, and they'd be kids and they'd be kicking around, laughing and enjoying themselves and having a good time. And you really kind of reflect on that, and you're like, we have all this stuff, and if we can't find a way to find enjoyment or have fun and laugh and play and enjoy life, I mean, I think you just really need to self-reflect on that. So it's kind of like a humbling thing that I always like go back to. The hardest part coming back out of that, I think, was that, because you come back and people complain about so many things, you know, about this and that, and like it's what in comparison is a minute thing is like the end of the world to them. I'm like, dude, there's people that literally struggle to turn on find enough food or shelter or to live the next few weeks to a month, you know. And I think it's the extent that was just the hardest part, really, was how much people complain about stuff, how much people don't appreciate stuff. But also I had an understanding of like why, because like I grew up in a different environment. Like I learned a lot through my experience. I was exposed to how much sheltered I really was compared to how a lot of the rest of the world really is. So, and I'd started a paintball airsoft company. And so I still kind of was doing my thing, but I was doing it on the fun aspect, kind of like training, you know, or got to run around and do it in a manner people weren't dying, you know, people weren't getting killed. I was able to utilize a lot of my training, you know, in playing paintball and playing airsoft, which helped me be good. A lot of people looked at me. I developed teams that we'd go to other fields and play and stuff. So I was kind of doing what I was doing before. Only I'd already worked up, because one of the other things I was the training NCO. Just before, when you're on deployment, you don't do a ton of training NCO stuff necessarily, but I was kind of able to take that and bring that to the kind of the airsoft community. I also find out that there's a chunk of airsofters that are veterans too, so you kind of connect with some of those in that manner. You have younger kids that I think end up mentoring into, you know, the Marines. There's a big group of kids that had gone in. One of the other guys that was on here, Josh, his brother and that whole group had all gone in the Marines, whether, you know, I had something to do with it, or Josh, or maybe the both of us, or maybe neither of us. Maybe they were all set on that path anyway, but that whole group, like, there's a good group of them that kind of all went in. But it was just nice being able to mentor them, and I really took that as the same way as my uncle's brother did, you know, to me, and, you know, helping them find out what they really wanted to do and fit, and to, you know what they were doing going into it, not so nobody would take advantage of them or anything like that, because I think they're going to be a better Marine that way anyway, doing what they want to do, than feeling like they got stuck in something that they didn't mean they want to sign up for. So
exactly. So you get out, you start this paintball business, or paintball airsofting. How do you end up getting back in to go to Ramadi? How do you end up, like, how did that all work?
So I got in a phone call. And I wasn't expecting it, you know, necessarily.
So what's the time from when you EAS to, again, I know you're going to tell a story, but like, how long was that?
So when I went back in, it was almost exactly a year. So I'd gotten called like a few months before that. To kind of set the orders and stage and everything else like that.
So what was that call like? How did that work?
So you actually, a lot of people don't realize that, but people that serve 4 years, they're actually usually under an 8-year contract. You know, 4 years active, which is what everybody usually knows, but a lot of people don't realize that there's also usually attached 4 years of inactive to that type of contract where you can get called back at any point. You can be forced back, called back at any point because you're contracted to be available. So you're kind of in a way like a ready reserve, only you don't have to go to reserve stuff. Every year you're supposed to just check in and make sure that, you know, you're up to par on whatever aspects that they want to know, whether it be medical or physical fitness or whatever. And you're supposed to maintain physical fitness capabilities so that you know you can perform if you come back. And yeah, I just got on a call, and I really appreciated it because I was asked. I think it was a total different mindset because I got to choose. And I actually, because I was married and I had a kid and I had other people that I was responsible to, I believe I turned around and told them like that I probably would, you know, got their number and told them I'd call them back within like so many days or something, and they were fine with that. And I went home, talked to my wife about it, and big reason for doing it is I wasn't to the point where I felt no matter what happens in the world that I at least served my time and did enough at some point. And even though I was part of the invasion and stuff like that, it wasn't combat, and even kind of a fulfillment on my own side, it just wasn't there. There's that emptiness.
Oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So I took it. I was excited about it. I still thought there was a lot I could bring. I also knew I had been out for a year. There's also a lot of unexpected challenges I didn't necessarily really realize or foresee, you know, happening because it was a different environment. You know, like my first 4 years, you know, even though I'd gone through several different units, it was all in the same battalion. There's enough people that knew you from different areas, especially when you're known kind of in the underground MMA side or the different things like that. You get known between a lot more different companies and people within the different platoons, and the respect level, right? Like you've developed, earned it, and got it. So I spent the last portion of my time with a decent amount of respect from a decent amount of people. And now you're going in a whole unit. They don't yet know you. You don't really know them. It's harder to be a good leader. It's a learning experience. How do you be a good leader coming into where you don't know anything about your guys? I mean, obviously you got to learn that. But if I suddenly became like your boss, right? Are you just going to open up to me about what you're good at, what you're not good at? Are you necessarily going to be fully honest about it? You know, even family stuff that, you know, to civilian life, you know, your family and work are supposed to be separate, right? In the military, your life is pretty much part of it, because everything else in your life, if you got finances that are bad, if you got whatever, that can affect your performance and other people's lives, whether they make it back. So there's pretty much nothing that is like an area you don't go in the military leadership wise. And I think good leaders like have a respect to that. And I think they really, you can't force somebody. You can't force your guys to open up and discuss different things, right? Especially when it comes to things that you don't know about that might be going on at home. And it might be something simple like, hey, their dad's got cancer, you know, or something like that. So, you know, really, it was harder. It was something new for me in trying to develop the respect of leadership. Because it was suddenly I was coming in there and I was already it. You know, I was put in initially as a squad leader and moved to a guide before we actually deployed for the platoon, which I actually think was a better spot for me and where I could bring more to the platoon.
How much time did you have between getting called up? I imagine, did your family just stay back in Wisconsin? Did you move back and then just like go to the unit and deploy? Like, or how did?
So I went to the unit, and it was like we first went to Camp Talaga, which I think was where Full Metal Jacket or whatever, some of the old Marine movies were actually filmed. But it was originally kind of not a portion of the base that was in use, and now they're calling these people back in. So they kind of fixed it up enough to cycle you through. So you had a processing point. You'd go through where you got to go through medical all over again. You do your PFTs and things like that. You know, is this guy going to be fit to be placed with a unit? And then you're also waiting to be what unit you're going to get placed with.
Oh, okay.
Because there's guys that were with that group, and there's groups that followed, and probably I think a few groups before us that rotated in under the same circumstances. I actually think some were forced in. I think they did that and were having major issues.
Yeah,
with
I imagine.
I believe they were initially calling people back and they didn't have their choice, and they were getting a different response, and it wasn't working.
No, yeah.
And so
even though
when it comes to my time,
yeah.
it was all people that were voluntarily there. I think there's a couple, and they asked us, like, did you feel forced or whatever the case is? Like, here's your time, and if you don't want to be here, like, we're not going to punish you, like, process you through, because people didn't even get to this point. So it was very much different, and I also feel like we were probably treated different than the group that came in also not wanting to be there, and it helps when you're under a different environment on both sides too.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt like we had special treatment. You know,
you guys aren't yelling
and
at
I was
us.
like, hey, we'll take care of it. Yeah, it was unique, and it was a nice experience. I enjoyed the processing time through. There's probably a little bit too much leeway that led to some people being a little out of the box and ended up not even going on or not continuing with the process, being placed with their unit. I wouldn't necessarily say kicked out. I think they just kind of released them from their contract. Over behaviors and different things like that. But even when we got to the units too, like, these are guys that, and also because a good chunk of us had combat experience. So you come back in, you had higher rank, you had combat experience. Most of us were all corporals and sergeants, from what I recall. I think there might have been maybe a few lance corporals or something out of the group. And then when you're placed with a unit, the unit actually had a fairly decent amount of kind of like respect towards us, because we're kind of an asset to them. Well, and they're going to need to count on us when we're over there from a higher point. So the hardest part was just meshing. You know, this is units that they've been through. They brought their guys on. They've gone with their training and everything else like that, and they've created their bonds and learning about each other. They stood their posts on guard. You know, they learned so much about each other, and here's this guy coming in here and now having orders. You know, and I guess one of my cases would be like a lance corporal was used to a little bit more special treatment, because he'd actually gotten, if I remember right, he had gotten dropped down in rank or something had happened or whatever at one point, and that's kind of why he was at. So he had greater time in service. But I come in there treating him like a lance corporal, just like the rest of them, and that created environmental situations. There's also people that just connect better in most work environments, and they'd kind of already had their connections, and that would even be between leadership and subordinates to degrees. It also didn't help, and they didn't like. I ended up connecting fairly well with a couple that were like PFCs and lance corporals, because I'd had a paintball airsoft field, and they liked to paintball. So during this little bit of extra time, we went and paintballed. Well, the Marine Corps frowned upon, you know, fraternization with people of lower ranks. So that was kind of and something to navigate through. You know, like, how do you happen to have a commonality where somebody's at, and then you got to like ignore them while you're out there? You know, like, how do you do that? It was different, and it was definitely a learning curve. You know, coming in, like I said, as a leader to a completely new unit and trying to develop in a short amount of time, because they were literally getting ready to deploy. I believe I was with that not even a couple months, maybe at most. You know, and you got your few workouts. So you went. I remember being in Combat Town, doing a training mission. The training missions were very few. So even understanding, because as a leader, right, you're going to want to be able to put your best guys and best skill sets in the areas that are going to best benefit your unit, right? And even understanding that, or knowing like who's good at this or who's good at that, or who might be better on a saw, you know, or it was challenge. That was probably my biggest challenge out of that. And then we end up getting ready and deployed. We end up getting flown over there. That was actually nice. The flight over there was nice for me, because we ended up having, it was like, I forget what plane it was. It was a big plane. It had like 3 levels.
747. Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
Due to the group that I got put on, I ended up being one of the higher ranked people. So I got it in the
first class,
like upper ultra, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The seats went all the way back. You had your own screen. You got to choose what to list. Like, I was living it up on the way over, right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
And everybody else is like packed. Plus, you got all your gear and everything else all around you. Like, the way back, that's how I came back. It sucked. You know, and you're talking hours for a flight like that. So, yeah, the way over was nice. Again, it kind of volunteered to come in, and you feel like you're still kind of getting the treatment.
Yeah.
And that was just incidentally of ranks starting to load up and everything else like that for the way over. So there's a lot of us sergeants that were all up there. So it was nice. And then I forget what air base we landed in. We ended up going somewhere else, and then got put on I believe it was like a C-130 or something like that. Again, I feel like it was just like special treatment after special treatment. Incidentally, I ended up being one of the first ones to walk in, higher rank. And they asked me, like, we got an extra spot up in the cockpit. Like, would you like to come sit up there? I'm like, being a leader, kind of like, do I turn around and take this or do I not? You know, because in the Marine Corps, you kind of sit in the suck with the rest of your guys. But I end up taking the opportunity. I'm sitting up in the cockpit area, and I was kind of like up and behind, so I could kind of see everything that's happening, going on in the whole flight. It was unique because I've never gotten to since, never did before. And oh man, when we landed, it was bad, because you're like almost nosediving down into land in Iraq, so that, you know, anti-aircraft fire, or even more so RPGs and other things that aren't necessarily meant to turn around and take it out, just takes away a lot of risk. And just little minute ahead of time, like, notice, and all of a sudden we just started diving down, and I ended up puking. Like, it was bad. And I ended up just pulling, because I don't want to do it in front of everybody else. Like, I don't want to have, like, it's not like you got a puke bag or anything else like that. So I just, like, pulled out my flak, and that's just where it went. Cause the last thing that you want in the cockpit is all over all their instruments or something like that too. So I'm like, I got to go somewhere, and that's just where it went until I could clean it out. Total cool experience. I would not take it back. I'm glad I did it, but that was how I came in Iraq the next time. And then you're sitting there in the heat, you know, and you kind of got to go through that. It took a bit. I think actually until we got to where we're going, where it's like just sitting there dried on the inside. It's kind of gross, but
that's cool. So you get into Iraq. How do you guys end up splitting up into Ramadi? Like, what was that like then? Like, you were one of the first units to go back in, or say go back in, but kind of like getting into Ramadi in 2000. Was that what year? 2004 to 5?
It would have been 2004 and 2005.
Okay.
When I was back in Ramadi again that time, and there's another unit there already there, and I believe, you know, there's probably a couple of rotations in beforehand. On the sniper side, the previous unit, from my understanding, lost some snipers. I'm pretty sure it was a previous one and not one before that. So we had a friendly sniper rifle that was being used against us. We knew that kind of coming into it. Just kind of sucks with my background. You got a kind of a special, whatever. It sucks when you lose guys like that. But it was different, kind of coming in there. You know, you don't know what to expect. I'd say even reading all the books, all the preparation, wouldn't prepare you for what actual combat is. It gives you an idea, but the whole actual emotional side, the whole reality of it, I don't think you can put that in a book. Like, I think it's something you actually, like, really have to experience to really know, because there's a lot that goes on, and it goes on very fast.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have time to really think about it. You think about it later. Like, in the meantime, you're just kind of reacting and going through it, and everything is like, so many things are happening so fast.
Yeah.
You know, that it's just.
Yeah. So what was your guys like? What was your first firefight then? Like, you know, if that was, like I said, it's different from the invasion.
I actually don't remember what the first firefight is. Honestly, there's so many times that we got in firefights while we're there. I
One
mean,
that stuck out to you at all? That like.
there's a bunch of them that stuck out.
Yeah.
I'll say from a leadership standpoint, I'll hit on this one. We're taking a movement to contact fire, and at this point, I kind of moved around, whether I was the driver, whether I was a RTO, or dismounted from the vehicles and such. And at this point, I was in the turret, but I was also kind of manning the radio, and I was in the platoon commander's vehicle, so the front vehicle, and how we moved in that town. And we're taking movement to contact, so we're dismounted. So I was in the turret, and we were up on an intersection. This awning had kind of come down, and something didn't feel right because I couldn't see, it was blocking a rooftop. And there's a lot of rooftops I could still see, and there was no threat. But this awning was blocking a rooftop. I didn't feel right about it. And so you have two guys on the ground that come out, and they each have a corner on both sides of the street, right? And part of my job was to watch that sector, right? Which means with me not comfortable with not being able to see what was behind the awning, I was concerned about this guy and being able to be shot and me not having his back. So I'd actually called him back to a point where my vehicle would be in the way. Like, my vehicle would basically protect him with everything behind it, right? And short time later, all I see is like the vapor trail just drop from below the awning, and everything happens like so slow. Like, I can sit there, feel like in like your heart, like it feels like just time just stopped in that moment. Like, I'm just like waiting for it to hit me, because I was expecting it to hit my vehicle / me, because usually it's what an RPG is aimed at, and it was probably aimed at, but it literally just missed the corner of the turret, just missed the corner of the Humvee and how it was sitting with the turret, and impacted on the wall right next to Johnson, who I'd called back from up on that corner. And you still have the concussion from the explosion from it. So my head slammed forward. I remember it hitting on the gun. I had gouges in my forehead from the explosion or whatever type deal, and it kind of come back up, and I just sent suppressive fire, you know, to prevent any further fire from coming. But turn around for a moment, assessing, you know, for a report and everything else like that, or sit rep and everything else like that. He was totally unconscious, shrapnel ripped up his body, mostly his legs and everything else like that. And they're dragging him to safety, you know, type deal, to be able to work on him. And it took us an hour and a half just to get him out of that environment, just because of the combat level that we're in and engagements, to be able to get him back to anything further. We can bring in helicopter for evacuation. So that was hard. Thankfully, you know, by the time we got back home, he was walking, you wouldn't know it, like walking around and talking. You know, obviously he's probably got some mental challenges and stuff like that from the incident. I really don't necessarily know, but the scarring that he'll have for the rest of his life. But thank God, you know, he was alive. I didn't lose anybody from my platoon. Whiskey Company, they lost probably most because they were doing the support for convoy up and down the MSR Michigan's what went through Ramadi, so they would be on the roads a lot. Vehicle-borne IEDs were the biggest threats. They lost a lot of guys due to that. So that was one of the firefight situations that hit me most, because that was the one situation that was my call from a leadership standpoint, and that, you know, when you're in those situations, you like replay, like, would I have done it differently, you know, and I've kind of come to peace with it, because I'm like, I could have left them there. What you don't know is what would happen with all the other decisions. But there is a fair probability if I would have left them there, maybe would have gotten shot directly, you know, and killed and not made it home at all. Like I don't know that, and I still feel like doing it all over again, the probability RPG shot at the vehicle and missing it, and just I feel like I made the right decision even though it ended up not, and just the odds.
Well, that's just war, man. It's the
Right.
chaos. That's like you make the best decision you can at the moment. Like
Right.
it's just because you can play it a million different ways. And I was talking with Josh about this too. I mean, it's your time. It's your time. You can't game it. And especially if you said you make the best decision that you can at the time. Because
Right.
you made the right call. You didn't know an RPG was going to fly through, miss a truck, and slam right next to the guy. You know what I mean? You can't predict where they're going to fire
Right.
next. So yeah, I think guys kind of, I wouldn't say beat yourself up over it. I think guys, but I totally understand why. You want to make sure you bring all your guys back and no one gets injured. But the fact that you guys got all your guys back on your platoon, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Considering that, like I said, Whiskey Platoon got hammed up pretty bad, especially on the MSR. So, is there anything else that, like you said, you guys got into a bunch of fire? Was it just difficult working in Ramadi? I mean, talking with the other guys, we always hear about you guys, when I was in, and then after I'd gotten out, I heard a lot of stuff about. We were slated for Ramadi, but we never went. We ended up switching over to Fallujah provinces. But it seems like, I mean, that was a rough town to be in. What was the difficulties that you guys kind of ran into?
So it was an urban environment for one. There's a fair amount of buildings that had, were several stories high. So you throw that in there. You throw in the civilian populace. You throw in. I was really glad I was with the unit I was, because you have bad guys, right, that are trying to kill your guys, and then you got people that are just trying to raise their families and don't necessarily care who's in charge as much or the politics or whatever they do. Like, I just want to raise my family and be safe, type deal. And an example would be, we had this guy that regularly gave us intel, and he was fairly decent enough person within the city and reputation and everything else like that. He had stuff that he could lose, basically, right? And would give us good intel. And the same person, like, for example, if he was out in the market, right, and he has a son with him out in the market, and say the bad guys tend to set up an ambush, IED and small arms fire and everything else like that, and we get ambushed, and we just do a suppressive fire back, right? And now his son ended up getting struck in that, probably unintentionally or maybe unintentionally. If you respond that way, is that guy most likely gonna have a high probability of still giving us good intel, still caring about us on the level 2 give us intel? So I think it's really coming down to understanding that, the developing the relationships with the community, growing that, showing that we're not the negative things or the negative side as much as possible, the humanity and who we are. I think that holds true and valuable just to general world standing in politics. But yeah, I was just really, because it's hard, when you have guys getting blown up or shot and stuff like that. We're on reactionary force, another firefight. We're standby in reactionary force, and we had actually had a sniper team, Hubbard and Barrow. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. So they were actually good friends before they went in the Marine Corps, joined the Marine Corps, and both, how hard it is and rare it is to make it into a sniper platoon. But they both made it into the sniper platoon and everything else like that together. And they both lost their life together on a mission due to IEDs. And we're the response team for that. That was just a bad day in general, because there's a lot of casualties that day. We'd had that was our response, that we were reactionary force. We had, as we were loading our vehicles for reactionary force, we took mortars in. Our platoon took some casualties with mortars that come in. Only one guy didn't end up going out with us. Another guy went out with us but had shrapnel in his ankle. It was one of our squad leaders, and dealt with it way later in the day. We went out on the mission. I remember that was one of the times we stopped at one point. I come around to the vehicle just for dismounted security, and there's rounds running out right in front of me. I'm like, oh, go back around a different side to get a different angle on the vehicle. Had a point where we had a 50 cal on a 7-ton that went down, and we were taking pretty sporadic fire, and it was important to get that cruise serve weapon back up. And so I was expecting the probability to get shot fairly decent, and I turned around and gotten up on it, and what had happened was the casing had split, so it wouldn't feed another round. The front of the 50 cal casing was stuck in the 50 cal, and we didn't necessarily know that right away, because you could turn around, pull it out, and look down the barrel, and you still see right down the barrel, and like, what was the issue? And but we weren't able to get it up at first. We end up one of the times just trying to reload around, the previous round and casing just caught on it enough that it ended up pulling it out, and it started working again. So it was working a second time, and then it went down again. So I climbed back up there again. We got it up and going again. And then the third time, for whatever reason, it was just having issue after issue. And climbed back up there again. I decided we need to change it out. And so we got in a 240 Golf up there instead of the 50 cal. It's just what we had as an option. We didn't have another 50 cal. So we got 240 Golf up there. And what I didn't completely know at the same time is we had another unit that was pinned down. Being able to get that gun up was able to give that unit enough relief that they weren't pinned down anymore. And so it had gotten submitted for a Bronze Star with Valor or whatever type deal, because like there's rounds. I'm actually surprised I didn't get hit. Like I was literally waiting for one of them hit, because you could hear, like when you stand in the pits and it's like cracking, like it was cracking around me, and all I knew is I needed to focus. Yeah. Like everything else is secondary. Like I need to focus on what is the issue with a gun, being able to get it back up, and like you said, what Josh said, if it's my time, it's my time, and maybe it might not. Maybe I'll just get minorly injured. Like you don't think about all this stuff. You're just like doing at that time. Like afterwards, you like, all these scenarios could have happened or whatever type deal. It was definitely an adrenaline pump. Like I remember that whole time. One of the squad leaders that had the corpsman was brought up, because there was a big wall that kind of blocked a good portion of the 7-ton, and the 50 cal, and the turret stood over that wall. So they were still kind of protected, so they could kind of just stand down there. And so I had the corpsman down there, and apparently they were just like waiting for me to fall. All I can say is that whatever it was, my luck that day, that didn't happen. But we'd had, I believe it was a Exo's vehicle had gotten hit, RPG had hit. We had that deployment. We had armored or Frankenstein type vehicles mixed in, and it hit one of the armored windows that blown in on that vehicle. So we had some casualties on that, and we did a 2-vehicle like support extract of that while all this other stuff is going on. So it was just event after event that day. That was I would say probably one of our worst days in Ramadi, because we went back to the base for the Kazabak, and for whatever reason, they're like, hey, just stay at the gate or whatever, and we'll pick you up on the way back. Well, we're sitting there at the gate. We're waiting and waiting and waiting. If I recall right, it was just me and the gunner in that vehicle, because the platoon commander and stuff was with his guys dismounted, still out on the town and everything else like that. And I forget who was in the other vehicle that went with us with the actual casualties or that we're in support of. And it was a good drive across town. Like, you don't want to be driving in a normal convoy and you look at the casualties, right? Here we're doing a Kazabak, like a 2-vehicle Kazabak all the way back across a good part of town. And we're sitting there at the gate, and you're hearing stuff over the radio and what's going on. Here we're sitting here like, we can't do anything. We're told to just sit and wait. And more time passed by, and eventually I talked to my gunner. I'm like, I'm not going to make this decision unless you're on it with me. But I feel like we need to get back there. This is a single vehicle, right? We're driving by on our own. Like, this could go bad, type deal. And I'm like, I'm not going to make that call unless you're on board with me. And he was like, I'm all for it, because he didn't want, like, if something happens to your guys and you're not there, like, that it'll carry with you. Like just being in that situation knowing something might happen to your guys
Yeah.
is hard enough. And finally we're like, we're just gonna go.
Yep.
And because we weren't able to make radio contact either with the other vehicle that we're with, and we just drove out there and was able to make radio contact with our guys and connect it up. And I think that was actually before the whole 7-ton thing. I'm not necessarily sure. There's so many different things that took place. Like even that day, like I was actually a little bit excited.
Yeah.
Because I got to call in air for the first time.
That's
like,
awesome.
Outside, so I did CACs.
Yeah.
That was one of the things earlier when I was talking about when I was with Say, we got a call for air and that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Calling in the fixed wing and rotor wing and everything else like that. Well, I called in air support. We'd gotten them narrowed down to a building. Ramadi's tough to turn on and get air support for because of collateral damage and everything else like that, the way it is, and how a lot of times they'd be so integrated within the civilians. And we kind of had them narrowed down to one building. We felt like it wasn't like filled with civilians or anything else like that, and there was a good amount of them. And so I got them on station, but then we decided not to drop because the right person that needed to authorize it, just the contact radio and everything wasn't able to come full circle. I look back on it as like I'm just taking that it was the right thing that was meant to happen, that maybe there would have been casualties that we wouldn't have wanted or whatever that I either would have had to live with or not, or who knows. Either way, they didn't drop, but like I remember I was like sitting there watching them. They're like, they give you time on station, right? Sitting there doing the countdown and still trying to make the comm happen and the connection, and you're dealing with, you know, your UHF or VHF to be able to have that direct contact, you know, with the pilots and stuff like that too, between the person that needs to authorize it. There's a lot that goes on in that whole environment. And so I was a little bit disappointed, but I guess
trying to grab some JDAMs,
you know, but that would be it if the end result was what I was meaning it to be. And I just don't know if that's what it would have been. So
well, we're gonna have to continue this at another time. This is our hard out. We're 5 over. So no, Jared, you know, thanks for coming on. This was awesome. Like, you know, I definitely want to dive more into your Ramadi story. So I'm saying, but if you come back on, I know you're local, so we'll have a part 2 because I do want to dive more into your experience. I'm glad we got to at least towards the end here. But dude, your experience is awesome. It's unique. So I'm glad we got to capture that and talk today. So we're gonna have to have you on again. I apologize to the audience. We have a hard out today. We did a solid 2 hours 59 minutes. So thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I feel honored. I actually feel like I should be the one having you on, like my podcast.
No,
or something.
No, we're good. We're, like I said, we'll have you because we're getting to it. I'm like, oh, we gotta, you know. But yeah, I got a heart out. So we'll definitely have you on again, and maybe get you and Gabe and Josh on. These guys.
Yeah, that'd actually be cool getting us all 3 together. Yeah. Like the differences and transitions between our times.
100%, absolutely. So thanks for coming on, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and anywhere people can find you. You on social media, Facebooks, anything like that.
Not really. I got Facebook and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm kind of. I don't know if I want to make this whole like podcast thing or become famous out of it or necessarily connect. I do like veterans and that community and stuff like that. I kind of connected with a handful of different pages and stuff like that.
That's cool.
So yeah, I'm not really utilizing this to I don't know, become increase any social media platforms or anything like that. So
sometimes it's just cool for your family, friends, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, thanks for listening and thanks for coming on.